Okay, I think we're ready to get started here. We're starting right on time, unlike last week. So, good evening, everybody. This is Tech Thursdays, episode 74. This one's going to focus on Gamescom and some of the remaining X870E motherboards, but then we're going to talk about some of the new news that literally just leaked within the last 24 hours or so. So we're going to talk about graphics cards on this stream, specifically Intel's Battlemage graphics card, which I don't really know if it's a leak because Intel did do kind of a innovation hour where they kind of talked about some of the stuff with their new architecture for Lunar Lake laptops and that sort of thing, and then they did kind of talk toward the end about the discrete cards. So it does look like there is going to be a Battlemage GPU. We're going to talk about that. And then also RDNA4 has also been leaked. So just to kind of go over some of these articles here. I don't know how we're going to break this down. I think we can either talk about graphics cards first, or we can get the motherboard stuff out of the way, which is the Gamescom news. Did you see the RDNA4 video? Yes, I've seen the video. We're going to talk about that. I think what we should do, let's talk about the motherboards first, and then we'll talk about the graphics cards next. Because I do think the graphics cards are going to be where we spend most of the time this evening. Because a lot of that news was, just a week ago, we were all thinking that the GPUs were delayed, but now it looks like that might not be the case. But I need to go through some of the things, particularly on the Battlemage one. So let's just briefly cover the motherboards. So for those of you that are unaware, this week in Germany, there is Gamescom happening. Tomorrow is the last day. Actually, yeah, tomorrow is the last day of the event. And there is going to be an AMD show. So AMD at Gamescom is tomorrow. So this will be like the last major thing or event that happens at Gamescom. So it's going to be in Hall 8 starting at noon tomorrow. So that's basically what? A little less than 12 hours from now, I would say, is when that's starting. No, that's not right. Yeah, it's about 10 hours from now is when this show is starting. So this will be the last major Gamescom announcement. So if there is going to be an official unveiling of RDNA4 based off of the Moore's Law's Dead leak video that literally went up, I think within 24 hours, that video has gone up. And it just so happens that tomorrow is going to be the AMD Gaming Festival event. So maybe there is going to be an announcement at that event. Because if you guys remember, 2 years ago at Gamescom 2022 was when they announced and unveiled RDNA 3. So the 7900 XTX and the 7900 XT, they were unveiled at Gamescom 2022. So if there is going to be an official announcement for RDNA 4, tomorrow should be the announcement. Because that is the only major event that AMD's having for the remainder of this year. After Gamescom, there won't be any big AMD press event thing with, the consumer market. No, at least not open to the public like this. So, yeah, we could be hearing about RDNA 4 tomorrow. So it's within 24 hours. In fact, I think it's within 10 hours, or about just under 10 hours now for this event. So that's going to cover RDNA 4 in detail, assuming it's actually going to be talked about there. That being said, we are going to talk about RDNA 4 on this stream. The other big one was Intel. So Intel is ready to take... so this title from WCCF Tech, Intel ready to take its second crack at discrete gaming GPUs with Arc Battlemage, aka XE2. Larger configs, faster memory, bigger caches. We'll talk about this one later as well. So it looks like there could be some GPUs coming out this year. Besides the 50 series, like a 5080, for example, from NVIDIA. And then the other thing that happened was I think the second day, it was either yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday was the second show. So MSI did their thing, kind of like ASUS, but it was way more informal because it was a live stream event from MSI Insider. So they did show off, they even actually took this motherboard apart. So they did show off the X870E Carbon Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Ace, so it's not the flagship motherboard. But they were literally outside deconstructing the motherboard. So maybe that's why they didn't want to show off the Ace just yet. But the Carbon looks like a pretty decent motherboard from what they showed. In fact, we can probably look at it here on the video.
So we have some more space on that side.
The other thing is they did announce game controllers.
Game controllers, so the Force series, there is the GC300.
So MSI is getting into game controllers, which I thought was kind of interesting. So that is new, I guess. They have some gaming wireless mice as well, and then they do also have keyboards. So it looks like ASUS wasn't the only one that was launching gaming keyboards and gaming mice. It looks like MSI is also doing the same thing. And then they also showed off a couple of cases and things like that. We're not going to waste too much time on that, but they did show these game controllers.
Force Pro wireless.
Force GC300 and Force Pro wireless.
So you also get XYAB here.
It's like one of them has the dragon emblem from MSI. The other one literally has the Microsoft Xbox button.
And the analog in the top left. This one actually you already took apart.
Yeah. But like an expert. I didn't damage anything. Come here.
How does this work? You already did this. And make sure that it can go back together.
Oh, okay. That's
So this is the Pro model.
Yeah, so it's kind of like an Elite controller in the sense that it's easy to disassemble.
In this model, you can replace the thumbsticks. So you can take them out.
Yeah.
And it also has a swappable D-pad.
okay.
I wonder if they're going to use like Hall effect
So you can just take them out
analog sticks.
and replace them.
Yeah. In case, for example, at a certain point, they start to develop stick drift or anything
Oh,
like
if they're
that.
talking about drift, then it's probably
And they only
not.
fit in.
But anyway, so they've got that, and
In a
then
certain
they
way.
show
In
off
a
like
certain way,
keyboards and
maybe-
mice. So the keyboard, let's just look at the
But yeah,
keyboard.
really quiet for
I think we need to feed him some.
They're going with the really, really quiet type keyboard though, so it's not like loud. It doesn't have the thick sound like the ASUS one.
meat.
At least that's what
He's
it
getting
showed in
annoying.
the video.
Our cameraman.
By the way, you can use this in 3 different ways. You can use the 2.4 gigahertz wireless.
Yeah, they do have the
receiver.
full
You can
layout
also use
with
it in
the
wired mode
resting
or in
pad, I
Bluetooth.
guess the palm rest.
Some nice media buttons on there as well.
Yeah.
This is, by the way, where you can set the different connections. And of course, perky RGB lighting and a nice wrist pad. Then let's continue to our headset.
They've got what looks like the
Maestro
Corsair
300.
volume wheel. I think Corsair was the first to do that. Oh, now they've got the
Yeah,
wireless.
That's for the
Wireless
Only one
headphones.
is dropped out of it. Yeah, no, that is how when I buy a headset, you know, when I'm gaming, like Mario Kart, I'm always doing like this.
When that guy's playing Mario Kart, he actually does that.
Does it work?
Yeah. You go fast in the car. I
Okay.
should have done that with a racing sim.
Oh, then you would have.
Yeah. But that's always how I test a headset for me personally, how I feel is good.
You have the
So,
Corsair
over this-
K55.
You know, this is
RGB Pro,
not
and
like
it's
fake leather
full
or
layout.
something.
It's
So
fabric.
yeah.
What I really like about this headset, it is a wired headset, by the way, over USB. But look, you can connect it either through USB Type A or through
Whoa,
USB
nice.
Okay,
Type-C.
see, that's cool. Do you see that? That is actually pretty cool. So it has the USB-A adapter, and then it also has USB-C. This is one of the things that I think over time, USB-A is going to slowly go away. It's going to be a slow transition where someday all these peripherals, you know, mice, keyboards, controllers, headphones, etc., all the things you plug into the back of your PC, eventually it's probably all going to transition to USB-C. So it is good to see things like this where now, like the native cable is terminating on a USB-C connection, but if you need USB-A, there's an adapter for that. I think we're going to start seeing more and more of
Nowadays,
this
you also find
sort
more
of
and more
thing
cases
with a
that
lot
have
of these
USB Type-C on the
peripherals
front.
going forward.
And especially if you're like me into mini ITX PC, sometimes you only have a single port, and if you only have USB Type-C, you still want to connect it to the front.
And that TNC fabric is nicer than leather or pleather. What is that? Pleather, plastic leather.
Yeah. It's
Anyway,
it
so let's
depends
kind
a
of
bit
skip
on
through
what
here
your
to the
goal is.
motherboard
Like in terms
section.
of noise isolation,
Leather is
So then
Let's
they
see if
just
we
it
can
gets
find
very,
a
very
place.
blurry.
Maybe we can also, I mean,
And they go
people doesn't like to
outside.
do live stream, so maybe we take this with us. We also show everything.
Yeah, it's like 144p quality
Oh, we
right
have
there.
a DJ now.
Oh, not sure if the music.
We can go to the back of it.
Yeah. Mike, shall we maybe get some drink?
That's a good idea.
Look at that video quality, man. Great live stream. Such good quality. Oh, it's even lagging. You know why it's lagging? I bet they walked too far away from their wireless access point, so it's roaming onto another access point. That's why it's doing
Alcohol for
this.
you now.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so
will
what
it
do you
be?
want?
I'll have a beer, please.
Anyway, let's
Yeah, I'll have a
skip
draft one.
to this part.
Water?
Okay, so
go.
let's skip to the motherboard.
This is one of our new AMD motherboards based on the AMD X870E chipset. And it is our MPG X870E carbon Wi-Fi motherboard.
All right, so this is the carbon Wi-Fi.
And it loves screwdrivers.
So this is like the second. This would be like the second best
Oh,
MSI
you hit the
motherboard
SSD in there already.
because the Ace would be the top.
I prepared some.
Okay, there's the obviously
wait,
there's
I
the
need
godlike, but no one ever bothers with the godlike. So the Ace is basically number
Why don't we do
one,
each week
and
a
then
live
now
stream
you
like
have the
this?
carbon underneath that. So this is like the second best
motherboard.
Yeah.
motherboard from
This, of
MSI.
course, AM5 motherboard, compatible with both the 7000, 8000, and the new 9000 series.
Yeah.
AMD
The 9000 did get a lot of positive reviews, but still, I think Zen 5 is quite powerful.
All right, let's go to the
It's
part where
just
he
a matter of
shows the
time before,
I/O
you know, there are
because they're
already
just gonna
rumors that
like
they're going
talk
to
all this marketing stuff in the
chance
beginning.
to win OLED.
Oh, they're giving away
OLED monitor.
OLEDs,
So,
guys. They're giving away 32-inch 4K OLEDs.
And, hopefully you can put a link in the chat
MPG,
for
they're
landing
giving.
page.
There's two different ones.
Participate, and yeah, hopefully you win.
MPG QD
How
OLED
many under
monitors
two? How many SATA ports?
on their giveaway.
Oh,
Now
well, SATA, I think
we're
normally
watching this like
it's
way
a
after
easy
it
answer
aired,
because
so
6.
I'm pretty sure
No,
those
I think
giveaways
nowadays
are
4.
gone.
Nowadays 4?
Yeah. There you go. 4 SATA ports.
Since when did they change that?
Since there are
Okay, so it
many
looks like
M.2s.
they've got 4 SATA. They've got 2. What looks like the USB 3.2. They have 2 USB 3.0, and they have the postcode right there next above the 24 pin.
I can
I actually like where MSI places the postcode debug. I like that it's not at the very top of the motherboard. I like that they have it further down near the 24 pin. Because if you have your case on the floor and you look down at your PC as it's booting, for example, it's much easier to see the postcode if it's lower down than if it's like way up at the top, because then the top of your case will obstruct your ability to see the postcode unless you like literally like look over under the desk. So I actually like MSI's placement of the postcode debug. I think they do it the best when it comes to placing where they actually place
We
that
can just open
postcode.
this up because it has the easy M.2 shield firmware.
So everybody's going with this toolless quick disconnect
So there's
for the
1,
SSDs
2,
now.
3, 4.
Yeah.
And maybe before we answer some other
So they're doing
questions,
4
maybe let's first
M.2
talk about,
drives.
some of the new features.
Yeah.
Which is easy.
You already saw the easy M.2 shield frozen that you can just take off like that. Now we also have a second generation of the easy M.2 clip.
If X870
actually,
replaces
for
B650E, then I
comparison,
don't
the
see
first generation
debug
right here.
display on.
I mean, the actual motherboard will also have a second generation.
Yeah, it depends on the
And this
price
is the second
point.
generation.
Yeah. Oh, one moment.
Well, it has a.
I would say if it's like a
thermal
$300+
plastic
motherboard, it'll probably
Maybe
have
use
the
this one and
postcode.
this
If
one
it's
demo.
under
Yeah,
$300, it
So,
will
maybe
probably
this one
not
first,
have
and
the
you go all
postcode.
generation.
Usually, always take.
A little bit. Jeroen, can you see this? The small thing? Oh, you're going to
Yeah,
even.
always peel this off when you install SSD. We should provide the right example.
What is
but
happening
it's
right
A
now?
little bit difficult to reach. By
He's
the way,
having a
using
hard
dead
time
SSDs, so
removing.
don't-
Why does he bother?
I see
He doesn't
why
have
he's
to
bad.
remove
Yeah,
that
smell that,
little
yeah.
plastic cover over the thermal pad because
Can you
this is
reach
literally a
this?
demonstration.
My fingers are too fat. We should take the lid to the other side.
Anyway.
You see my nail? What I
Oh, you just took the.
Oh, he tore some of the thermal pad off because of his
Um,
fingernail.
This is what you would find like in the first generation easy under 2 clip. So you press it down, and then basically you put this over. Yeah, there you go. So you can see this.
You can go
Now
with the
it's open,
B650E-E.
And now it's closed. In the second generation.
Yeah, that's good. The B650E-E under $300 with a postcode. Yeah, that's actually very good.
Release it, you just press this up again, and it's open.
Yeah, normally you do it from this side. So.
Yeah, why is this? I noticed this is actually a little bit.
So it became even a little bit easier with the second generation. So that's the easy under 2 clip Gen 2.
And I mean, you will not only see this on the AMD X870 motherboards, but also on the next generation Intel motherboards. I mean,
okay, so the Intel motherboards, newer Intel motherboards will also get the toolless design, and that's expected, right? Like we would expect them to do that for all newer motherboards going forward.
Questions. Yeah, they want a hamburger. Yeah, later for that. Are those PCI Express 5 lanes?
These 2 slots are PCI Express.
So you got two Gen 5 slots. So whenever they say that the SSD is Gen 5, that automatically means that those drives connect directly to the CPU and they completely bypass the chipset.
And 2 are PCI Express Gen 4.
So the other 2 are Gen 4, which means the other 2 go through the
So that's for the
chipset.
M.2, and then we also talk about the PCI Express lanes.
Yeah. Same here. These Gen 5, that one Gen 4.
Yeah. So
All right, so that I actually kind of like the way this motherboard is laid out. So he just said that the top PCIe slot and the second PCI slot, basically the ones that have that metal reinforced, what do you call that, frame, those 2 are PCI Gen 5, which means those 2 connect to the CPU. Now, it means that they're also sharing bandwidth. So the top slot can do up to 16 lanes. The second slot is going to be an X8 slot. And as soon as you use that slot, it's going to take half of those 16 lanes from the top slot to power the second slot. That's pretty standard practice on a lot of motherboards. Anyone who's ever done multi-GPU in the past, like if you ran SLI or Crossfire back in the day, you know how it is. You know how the second slot always takes half the lanes of the top slot. So when you were running a Crossfire or SLI setup, you were always running your dual GPUs at X8 for both GPU. That's no different here. So it's X8 for both Gen 5 slots when they're both in use. Otherwise, you get the full 16 lanes on the top slot if you leave the second slot empty. And then the third slot down here, I'm going to guess, just looking at it, it's going to be either an X4 Gen 4 or it's going to be possibly a X4 Gen 3, but I don't really know at this point. Without reading any spec sheet, I'm only guessing.
Basically, in this next generation, you get a lot of Gen 5 PCI Express.
Yeah, and good observation. I noticed also they're doing the Gigabyte thing. I call it the Gigabyte thing because Gigabyte was the first to do this, where notice that when there's 3 PCIe slots, they put the bottom slots all the way down at the bottom of the motherboard close together so that if you have a giant quad slot GPU, you don't have to worry about the graphics card covering up the second slot. That was a problem with a lot of motherboards. If somebody installed an RTX 4090, for example, it would literally cover up the second slot so they couldn't use it, or it would be so close to the slot that they couldn't plug anything in the second slot, because if they did, it would completely block the fans from the 4090, so it wouldn't be able to get enough air. So meaning it was basically unusable. So they've done the Gigabyte thing. That's fine. That's actually optimal in this day and age because of how thick a lot of GPUs are getting.
And yeah, the quick release we already showed.
And there they go. They got the button. They have the quick. They have the quick release button for the GPU.
Remove the VGA cards.
Yeah.
That is nice to see.
Let's move to the I/O a bit. As you can see, it has a very
Well, they got a really fully loaded
and
I/O.
You will find 5 gigabit LAN here.
That's a
This
lot
one
of
has an
I/O.
additional 2.5
5
LAN.
gigabit LAN.
Then here you will find the Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi 7. And they got optical audio as well.
These are actually USB 40 gigabit.
There you go,
per second ports,
USB 4.
Yeah,
and
so
they also support
that's also
DisplayPort.
something new on this platform, AMD 870 platform.
Yep,
It's
there we go.
required
So
to
there's
have
your USB 4, the 40
And
gigabit
nowadays,
USB.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's already a standard, but it's becoming slowly a standard. This means the more computers.
And then it looks
notebooks,
like there's
desktops,
a 10
mainboards
gigabit
will have this, or
USB-C.
motherboards, I should say.
And actually, it looks like every single one of those USB ports are 10 gig USB ports. Yeah, every single, all the red USB Type A are 10 gig. And then you got 2 standard USB-C that are both 10 gig. And then you got the 2 with the white outline on them. Those are the 40 gig USB 4, which are using the ASM4242. Then there's also an HDMI, which means just like the Hero, this motherboard can drive 3 external monitors via the integrated graphics on the Ryzen CPU.
The more devices will come on the market, and this will increase the performance of these devices quite a lot.
Yeah.
There's also dual
And they
LAN. There's
carry the
2.5 gig
DisplayPort
LAN and there's 5 gig
so
LAN.
that's also why you don't see a regular DisplayPort on here anymore, only HDMI, but you can still...
You know, I like that they're putting 5 gig and 2.5 gig. 10 gig would be nice, but realistically, 10 gig would drive the price of the motherboard like way up. And on top of that, the reality is very few people actually have a 10 gig network system in their home or their apartment. Like, not very many people are going to actually have 10 gig. Unless you're doing like real like workstation use cases, then a 10 gig makes sense. But think about it, the cost of a 10 gig switch versus the cost of a 2.5 gig switch or even a 5 gig switch, there's a huge difference. It's like a 10 gig switch is like double the price. So, and on top of that, this assumes that the house or the dwelling where these PCs are connected or installed, the walls have to have like Cat 6 cabling, and not a lot of places have that kind of infrastructure. Most homes, if they even have RJ45 in the walls, are going to be Cat 5e, which isn't even rated to run 10 gig. So, but it can do 5 gig in short distances. So I think this is a good balance. I think it gives a lot of connectivity to offer 5 gig and 2.5 versus like, 10 gig and nothing else. So most people have 2 gig internet at best. I wouldn't even say most people. I would say like a few people have 2 gigabit internet at best. But yeah, you're right. Like not even, so it's like if you have 10 gig, you're still bottlenecked by your ISP. So yeah, and most people I would say are probably having like anywhere from like 500 meg to 1 gig. And that's all, both of those network interfaces and Wi-Fi 7 complete overkill for like a 1 gig internet connection. So yeah, I think this is pretty future-proof. I like that they have 5 gig on here though. That's very nice to see.
They'll have DisplayPort over the USB Type-C.
And he just verified what I said earlier. He just said that there is DisplayPort alt mode over those USB 4 ports.
Tom is asking, why do we have the screwdriver? Well, we're thinking about, or I was thinking about,
Take some stuff apart.
to remove the heatsinks and have a look at the VRM.
Yeah. First, we're going to continue with the I/O. Heroes have 3.
Oh, it also has the clear CMOS, the BIOS flashback button, and a smart programmable button that you can literally... So the smart button, I think the default behavior is reset, but you can program it in the BIOS to do specific things. Like you can program the smart button to automatically restart the computer and go into the BIOS. You can program it to do something with controlling RGB, so you can turn your RGB on or off with it. So I like that they've got those 3 buttons on there.
buttons. This one is the flash BIOS button. You have a clear CMOS button and the smart button. The smart button you can actually set in the BIOS if you, for example, want to use.
I should just let him talk. He's basically saying
button,
exactly what I just said.
To switch on and off Mystic Light RGB. So that's something you can decide yourself what you want to do with it. Then for the audio, we have optical audio.
Maybe talk a little bit about the audio spec itself.
I believe this is an ALC 4080 from Realtek. So
An ALC 4080 from Realtek is the
You don't see
codec.
as many ports anymore.
The audio
as you
codec they've got.
maybe used
Normally
in the
it's
past.
digital.
Yeah, more and more.
Yeah.
For, I guess, the
we
audio
use more
DAC.
space also for digital ports.
Yeah.
You do still get 2 analog ports, 3.5mm ones, one for headphones or speakers, and one for a microphone.
Yeah.
And then there is an optical output as well in case you, for example, want to hook it up to like an amplifier, or certain gaming headsets also use the optical output.
I think with these motherboards, Nero, I think there is a way to do 5.1 using just the two analog ports. I remember seeing, I know the Gigabyte motherboards that only have what this motherboard has can do 5.1. I forget exactly how it works, but basically when you convert it, when you enable 5.1, the motherboard changes the function of your line out and your mic input. They do something different when it's in 5.1 mode. So you can do 5.1 analog off of just those two ports. I'd have to go and look at the manual how that works, but I have seen it in the manual. I'm pretty sure MSI and everybody are all using the same codec, so it's probably all the same.
For easy debugging, there are actually 2 solutions on here. So you have the easy debugging LEDs.
Okay, so
right
you have
there.
your, so
you
he's
have
saying
the-
you have the postcode, and I like where they put it. I like how it's lower on the motherboard. I don't like it being at the very, very top, because then if like I said earlier, the top of the case obstructs your view of it. So this is the perfect spot. I feel like way down at the bottom of the board is not good, because then you can't see it because your GPU blocks it. And if it's at the top, you can't see it because the case blocks it. So this is a perfect position for this thing. And then they also have the generic LEDs that are not very useful for debugging, but they have those as well.
Hexadecimal screen right here, so you can get more detailed information about what the issue
I like the
may be.
hexadecimal digits, because then you can look in the manual
Yeah.
what it really is, and you go way more detail, because the LEDs normally only show. This is
LEDs show where the issue
like
is, but
last
not
week,
what
we
the issue
saw when we did the Cam 2 live stream, we saw that memory had an issue. I really don't know why. Maybe it was my finger trying to hold it down. But with this one, you can. With the 2 digits, you can really see. Okay, what is the hexadecimal error code? So you have to.
So then you know what the issue
255
is instead of just where you can find
Indeed,
it.
indeed. Like loose memory connection or fat finger trying to hold the memory down. Error.
Some nice front connectors on here as well, so you will find your regular USB 5 gigabit per second front connectors, and here you have Type C connector as well. Here you have the JAF2 connector.
It's also something new, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
that's a
also
new,
something-
I think that's an MSI exclusive thing. I don't think the others use that, unless I'm mistaken. But the JANF2 connector, it's a combination between like an RGB control, and then it also has, I think,
We introduced this on some of our Z790 Max motherboards, and this is basically a combined connector with a fan header and
fan
an
header,
addressable RGB
fan header and addressable
So,
RGB. Yeah, that's what that
Products
does.
that support this both get their PWM signal and the power for the fan from this, but also the addressable RGB
But
light.
heat sinks, then we can put them back on.
Yeah. There we go.
Peter is,
Make it a full motherboard again.
Yeah, Peter is saying somebody in chat is asking to see the complete mainboard.
Okay. Let me make it a complete mainboard again. There we go. That's the complete mainboard.
I forget
Yeah,
what the
really nice
carbon
connector.
looked like on the
Also,
previous
this is
one.
something you can expect to see on more of our other products.
Yeah, let's say next week.
Looks like they also have a supplemental PCIe connector at the bottom of the board.
And that one has that. And the benefit of that is also less cables.
Yeah, that one is
Basically,
probably
you
a
can
pretty
combine the
solid
signal and
choice
the power
overall.
cable.
I
And
can't
also a
really
very
see
common
anything
combination
that's,
anyway to
that it's lacking.
get a fan.
Everything what needs
fan power,
RGB
yeah.
needs power.
Yeah.
Or is that
Well,
the way around?
This motherboard is probably going to be like $450 if I had to guess. Somewhere in that range, for those wondering.
Also, no, RGB is basically also a power connector.
No, but okay, yeah, sorry.
So if you only have like an RGB strip, then
I want to make the joke, everything what has.
Okay, they're rambling about whatever, but I mean that's basically it. I think they're gonna disassemble the board too. Hold on, let me
to make
see.
sure you don't accidentally pull it out.
Oh, there's feedback on the sounds. I hope
Oh,
there's
they
not
also
too much
have a
noise.
magnetic
Yeah, it's a
Wi-Fi
barbecue, music
antenna.
playing.
Yeah, we're outside at the moment.
That is
Yeah.
something that I remember.
Can you still
MSI was like the
understand us
last
properly?
one to do that.
Please let us know that.
Like they had the
Otherwise, we
Wi-Fi
can, of course,
antenna,
move on.
Yeah.
but it was never
Indeed, many
magnetic,
people around.
so it would just slide around and
actually,
fall
Shall we
off
take
the
some
top of the
stuff apart?
case all the time.
There's actually a queue.
But
for
now they
barbecue.
actually have it
Maybe we should
magnetic. They
already
pointed that out
stand
earlier.
there waiting to get like some good food, and then I will take something for you. Okay?
Okay, let me see.
This
Let's.
AV1 encoding, but our cameraman needed to have a backpack. He's now making some suicide. Oh no, I should not say suicide, but he's now making some.
At the
Some gestures.
at least they have the LED. I
we
use
go.
a
Nurse outdoor.
20
They don't believe us.
USD. Oh, he
Hey,
took the
can
thing
you-
off. There's the
Is it
VRM.
another heatsink, Mike?
Yes.
Oh, notice they have. Notice there's a daughter
Wait,
board
we need to see
at the
that.
top.
We need to see this in more
I have a
detail.
feeling
It is
they.
actually
It's
like a
because of the
separate PCB
ASM
in the way we stacked all
4242.
the
Are these guys gonna
ports
pull
on
the
there.
ASM out of that thing? They're gonna pull that 40
You want me to
gig
take it off?
USB
Yeah,
4
I
thing
wonder
off
what it
or
is.
something.
It's-
What were they doing?
So that's the extra PCB. So actually,
Notice how it has a little
looks like
heatsink
low
on there.
profile.
It's basically to get everything on the I/O. I hope the screwdriver is small enough. No, it's too big. I'm afraid I cannot take it
Your
off. with this
motherboard has
screwdriver.
optical on it. You use it on the Sound Blaster G6.
Or can I?
Fio Majo is saying it's a pity that additional
Most motherboards
replacement
have the
Wi-Fi antennas
optical.
cannot be bought from MSI. Not sure. It's not an article, so indeed, I believe it will not be available in the shop, but you can always approach your service centers.
This antenna is really a great way not to lose any screws. Because I just stick everything to
So we need to give one.
to Jeff.
He's using the Wi-Fi antenna to hold the
maybe try
screws
to
with
do
the
it other way
magnet.
around?
No.
Yeah, you need to put some power on it.
Yeah. But then it should work.
Sorry, chat.
There we go.
Okay.
And then there is a connector on the bottom. We'll gently unplug this.
So this is the X870 Carbon.
Yes.
Actually, X870E.
Oh, he's trying to pull off the daughter board. There he goes. Look at that. So this motherboard has a
what is
secondary
this? This is
board.
an extra connector with a lot of
Yeah, this is
USB
our
connectors.
USB.
So that extra board has
And then we have here the three
USB
buttons.
and it's
So
got
we
the
already
3
talked about
buttons on
smart
it. Okay,
button.
so that's not the
Flash,
ASM.
flashback.
This is where
Oh,
it's
look at that! Look at that! Look at
And
that!
this is
Yeah,
where
so
you will
this is the
find
connector on
the
the back.
USB type, or the USB 4.0 port.
There you go. See, check this out. So look at this. There's the 40 gig USB. Notice how there's a dedicated heatsink. It has its own heatsink. Underneath this heatsink is that ASM 4242 from Media. The controller for the USB 4 is underneath the heatsink.
Small connector.
And also the chips for the USB 4 are located.
Are your
He
jeans
just said
anesthetic?
it. There you go.
Nah,
See,
we-
the
we have
ASM is
cars in the
underneath
studio,
that.
So we never worry about it.
So here you can also see a really beefy VRM design. It has 18 smart power stages specifically for
18 smart power stages.
CPU. Top of my head, I believe there are 110 amps each.
So that's 18 times 110, and the
CPU, for the
Ryzen 7 9000 is held back by a 65 watt TDP. What are we doing? This is
Yeah.
future proof. Let's say like that.
He's like, that was funny. He was like, we've got 18 power stages, and the Ryzen 9700X uses 65 watt TDP. What are we doing? You got an MSI guy questioning the choices on the VRM because it's so overkill for the CPU.
Indeed, indeed.
I believe they're 110 amps. I'm not 100% sure.
Is there a hint?
65
Level
watt
5 on the way
CPU
for Intel motherboards.
with that kind of
Makes a
VRM.
lot of sense. Of course, we can
Guys,
talk
this is
about
the
it,
reason why I
but
told
Intel
you, when it
5
comes to
already
these
announced by
motherboards, you don't
Intel.
have to worry about the VRM.
So,
All the VRMs are
indeed,
complete
probably we will
overkill.
see this in the-
They're complete overkill.
I hope that says enough.
They're so overbuilt for these CPUs.
Any other questions? about
Even
them?
the dual CCD, even the
We'll take
Ryzen
off even
9,
more.
Like, these are way overkill.
Well, the socket is the same.
But I think the rest is not too interesting to take on.
No, I think this is enough. I think I heard it's 20 if you talk about special Gen 5. Oh, the PCI Express lanes. Cannot confirm that.
What's actually also really nice about this generation.
Man, these guys don't know. Someone was asking about the PCIe lanes. Someone asked a question like, how I heard that the PCIe Gen 5 had 20 lanes. It's actually 24 lanes. But if we're being really technical, it's 28 lanes. But 4 of those lanes go to the chipset, so it's 24 lanes. But these guys didn't know the lanes.
Is that there is printing on the PCB, so you can see where the lanes come from.
Okay, that is cool. That is cool.
It's extremely difficult to show because it's quite tiny.
Can we try too? I mean,
yeah.
They actually printed where the lanes go.
Here, I'm not sure if you can read it, but the printing is right there.
That's
okay. So it looks like it says M.M2_1, which would be this first one. And then underneath that it says CPU. Then it says PCIe 1 or something, and then SATA something. I don't know. Interesting.
It's always an issue because
I think, it will be difficult. But there, at least it gives
you have PCI Express lanes from the chipset, which need to go to the CPU, which are a little bit slower, and you have PCI Express lanes from the CPU. And the CPU, now each generation, they're getting like 4 extra PCI Express lanes.
Basically, the CPU are more direct, because otherwise...
Indeed, so you have little lag, and then the DMI, the bottleneck, I don't want to say the bottleneck, but the DMI between the chipset and the CPU sometimes can be
so the connection between CPU and...
You have an 8-phase cheapo. That's overkill.
Peter is telling us that we still have 20% battery.
All right, I think that's pretty much it though for that board.
Price, yeah, that's a good point. Good question. We cannot talk about it.
They can't talk about the price.
Yeah, so
they can't talk about the price, but I can tell by looking at the motherboard, it's probably going to be like $450 if I had to guess, maybe even $500 or like $479 or something.
Saw that the AMD 9000 CPUs launched. There's a lot of rumor about some other X3D CPUs. These mainboards, you know, give it some time, and then we will also have a live stream at the right moment about it. And this is
talking about
first
X3D.
mainboard we show. So on computer, on computer.
Isn't there supposed to be another X3D Zen 4 CPU coming out next month? Isn't there like a 7600 X3D?
The Tomahawk, and now
the Carbon.
The Carbon. And expect more in the coming.
So this is the first time for the Carbon.
Indeed. I think that's it for today, Mike.
Yeah, I think so too.
We are getting...
Time to get in line, I think.
Okay, so they're going to go eat food. That's nice. All right, so that was the MSI motherboard, the X870E Carbon Wi-Fi. So overall, that's a pretty solid board. That's a pretty good board. It's going to be expensive, though, but it's a good one. Yeah, I think like for most people that want like the fully featured board that has everything, I feel like $400 to $500 would be the absolute maximum most people would actually spend, because once you go over that, then you hit diminishing returns, where if you're spending more than $500 on a motherboard, you're not really getting a whole lot more value out of it. I mean, you guys saw how overkill that VRM was, and that isn't even their flagship motherboard. So there's going to be one more, maybe two more. There's going to be an Ace for sure, and then there might be a Godlike, but I think the Godlike is, at this point, basically a meme. Like, no one actually uses the Godlike unless you somehow win it in some kind of giveaway from MSI, right? So yeah, it's a good board though. Like the Carbon Wi-Fi definitely looks like a solid choice. Like from what they showed, it doesn't have the Asus board that we looked at earlier this week. That one can support 5 M.2 drives, but the 5th M.2 drive shares the second PCIe slot's bandwidth. So if you add the 5th drive, you lose your second PCIe slot. Whereas with this MSI motherboard, as far as I could tell, as they were showing it off, this one only has 4 M.2 drives, but there's no limitation on sharing the second and third PCIe slots. So, yeah, I kind of think this one's a pretty solid choice overall. We'd have to look at the product page just to kind of verify a few things. But yeah, that one looks pretty good from what I could tell. The Meg Ace is still good. Yeah, the Meg Ace is still good. The only thing that I can see improving with these newer motherboards are the way they do the wire traces for the memory. Because this is going to be the second generation now for DDR5. And a lot of the challenge with DDR5, for those that have DDR5 motherboards, so for basically anybody who's on AM5 today, and anybody who is on Intel 13 or 14th gen, or maybe 12th gen, for the few people that actually have 12th gen with DDR5, if you're on DDR5, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever tried to run 4 sticks of memory and a lot of memory, you understand that it takes a long time to train, and you know it's not like how it was with DDR4. So one of the things that these new motherboards might improve is 4 RAM stick compatibility. That's, at least I'm hoping for that. The ASUS board that ASUS showed off should, in theory, definitely have improved support for 4 sticks, because ASUS was touting that patented technology of like the better traces with the gold plating, and it's further down in there, so there's less electrical interference potential. So stuff like that, you know, that's kind of what I think a lot of these X870 and X870E boards will offer that you can't get with the current generation motherboards. You have the Godlike, the X670E Godlike. That's a huge motherboard. Isn't that like a really wide motherboard? I know it's at least EATX. It's a 2 dimmer. What is that? 2 dimmer of 8000, but the 8000 can be done on like a lot of X670 boards though. But my IMC only did 76, so it runs 64 instead. You can save some power. I don't know if it's the IMC. I think it's actually the motherboard and the... It's going to be the motherboard and the memory. But if you're using RAM that's rated for 8000, it's not the memory. It's definitely going to be the motherboard. You're going to have to adjust proc ODT and those sort of things. It has nothing to do with SoC voltage. It has nothing to do with DRAM voltage. So, but yeah. We've covered 8000 on this channel. In fact, we're going to do it again. What I can tell you guys is I've already tested 8000 with the 9700X. 8000 works easily with 2 sticks of RAM. I'm running like 48 gigs, so that's 2 times 24 at 8000. It's easy. All I do, I don't touch any voltage. I literally just load XMP, hit F10, and let it train, and it's at 8000. So, I mean, that's the newer AMD CPU, though. That's not the 7000 series. That's the 9000 series. So the 7000 series might require a little bit manual tweaking. But yeah, I can get it working on X670 just fine. But I'm pretty sure these newer boards, it'll be even easier to do stuff like that. So it just comes down to what I call platform maturity. So we're now moving into the second generation of the AM5 socket. So you would expect the motherboards to be better in terms of memory capability, and then you'd expect the CPUs to be better as well. So that's kind of the natural thing. Anybody who's been on like Zen 1 and then went to Zen 2 knows exactly what I'm talking about, because Zen 2's memory controller and those newer motherboards were way better than the first generation. And even on Intel, if we're talking about Intel's Z790, Intel's Z790 boards do way better with high-speed DDR5 than the old Z690, which was the first generation Intel boards to support DDR5. So it's just platform maturity. That's all it is. These are just normal. It's the normal progression of things. It's an ASRock. What's the ASRock? Oh, the ASRock board B650. HDV? I've never heard of that. You research a lot on the Meg Ace. Was the one with the most M.2 without affecting slot 1. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, X670E was pretty good in terms of the total lanes. Yeah. Yeah, so just to give you guys an idea, I've been testing RAM on this new CPU here, and I've been trying to overclock it when I'm free to work on that. But just to give you guys a glimpse of what we're working with here. So this is my task manager of this PC that we're streaming on right now. And just to give you guys an idea, so you can see it is the Ryzen 9 9950X 16-core processor right here. And as you can see, we are running 192 gigabytes of RAM. So that means we are running 4 sticks of dual rank, fully maxed out DDR5. So I've been slowly trying to test stability at higher speeds. We've been upping the speed. Currently, I am running at 5200. How do I shrink this? So we are currently running at 5200 mega transfers. You can literally see it like right next to me. I can't show my finger, but there we go, like there. So we're running 4 out of 4 DIMMs on a 9950X at 5200. Technically, this is considered an unsupported overclock configuration. So if this is not working, I can't get any support from AMD because this is considered out of spec. The maximum official speed for anyone running 2D PC, which means 192 or 128, is 3600 mega transfers. So I have already overclocked the RAM way beyond the stock, because the stock is 3600. For this much RAM, the maximum supported speed is 3600 on DDR5. And we're running at 5200. So next I'll be testing 5600, and eventually the goal is to try to get either 5600 running stable or 6000 running stable with this much RAM. So this is a lot of RAM, as you guys can tell, like a 192. So for those, because there's a lot of like threads online, people complaining like, please help, please help. How do I get 4 sticks running? How do I get 4 sticks of DDR5 running? I need 128. I need 192. Help me. Please help. Please help. Overclock forums everywhere. I need help. I need help. Why isn't it posting? Why isn't it working? Well, because it's pretty hard to do. That's the bottom line. It's not an easy thing to do. So it's not just throw all the RAM in, turn the computer on, and expect it to work. I mean, it'll work at 3600. In fact, what I'll tell you guys is, if you don't care about like the high speed, 4800 is so easy. 192 gigs at 4800 is dirt cheap, easy to do on these new Zen 5. Like, you don't even have to do anything. You literally just turn it on, set XMP, scale it to 4800, and go. And it's good. But as soon as you go over 4800, like what we're doing here, 5200, 5600, 6000, I would say the upper limit is like 6000. I don't really see running this much RAM above 6000 as feasible, nor do I think it's actually even practical, because you have to start using Gear 2 mode, and you're already running so much RAM, and yeah, so, you know, but that's just to give you guys an idea of what I've been working on. I'm trying to get RAM overclocking as high as I can go with 4 sticks, with the full 192 capacity. You're using 232 DDR5 and we'll go to 2x48. I've been using, so what I will say is I've been using 96 gigs for about like over a year now. Like, I've been using 2x48 for a pretty long time, and that's pretty easy. So I've been doing like 40 or 96 at 6400 pretty much since a year ago. Then I bought a second kit for my X3D CPU. But then I realized, wait a minute, I can combine both kits and get a total of 192 gigs. So why don't I just do that? So I did that, and then I, like for the other PC, like for example, this one over here, so the 9700X, this one's running 48 gigs at 8,000. So we're going to try to go above 8,000, but I don't really see the point of going above 8,000, because at 8,000, F clock equals U clock, so you have that 1-to-1 ratio maintained. So that's, yeah, I don't really see the point of going too far above that, but yeah. Are you running VDDP 1.1 and VDDG 1.1? Hold on, I don't know actually. Let me see. I think I'm running 1.1 VSOC. Oh, you're saying VDDP. You mean VDDQ? What's VDDP? I don't know where that is. No, I'm pretty sure. So I'm running, all I know is I'm running 1.2 or 1.25 volts for VDD and VDDQ and what's the other one? VDDIO MEM or whatever, CPU MEM, whatever that third one was. It's basically 1.2 or 1.25. Oh, it's signaling. Stock is 1 volt. I don't, where is that in the BIOS? Like, what is that called? I don't know. If it's, for me, it's probably on auto, so I don't know what that's running. My VSOC is 1.1 volt, though, is what I can tell you. It's like 1.1 or 1.11. So anyway, yeah. You don't need a lot of voltage. It's not about the voltage, really, when you're trying to run a lot of RAM. Because, remember, the voltage is necessary if you're trying to push high speed. Like, we're talking, like, more than 6,000. You know, like, if you're trying to go for 8,000, for example, then the voltage matters. But if you're doing, like, a lot of RAM, but at 5,200, 5,600, somewhere in there, you don't actually need that much voltage. It's all going to come down to the resistive values. So, yeah, for me, what I can tell you is, so for my 192 setup, I'm using 1.2, I believe, 1.2, maybe 1.25 for VDD, VDDQ. And then for my 8,000, so my 8,000 is running at 1.35 volts for those VDD and VDDQ. More noise resistance, better training. So does that mean that it trains more quickly? I mean, the training thing is only slow like the first time. Once it's done training, all the subsequent reboots are fast because you're using MCR and power down enable. So, I mean, I always use MCR and I always use power down enable. So it's that, like, the reboots are never a problem. Every now and then, though, like once every 2 weeks or so, the motherboard does need to refresh the cached values, so it does have to retrain, but that's rare. It has to do it sometimes to refresh the values out of the table. And that's because it's storing it in a little ROM. I don't even know if it's a ROM chip. It's storing it in some kind of, almost like a non-volatile memory, but the memory is dependent on like a charge cycle lifetime. So it's like, after a certain number of reboots, that table needs to refresh. So that's why it has to retrain. I don't know why it's implemented that way. That was a little confusing to me, the implementation on that, on how memory context restore works. But yeah, it's just a behavior of DDR5, at least for now. And that's unchanged with Zen 5. So it's definitely more of like a platform thing rather than the CPU. Because the thing about DDR5 that I think a lot of people don't know is when DDR5, when you first turn on your computer, the part of the post test is initializing the RAM from the actual UEFI. So the CPU is not really involved in the first few steps. That's why if you're using an air cooler, you can see that the CPU is not involved in the very beginning, because like, let's say you load XMP and you hit F10. What happens is sometimes the fan for the CPU cooler will not actually spin. So your CPU is literally asleep or not initialized, and the BIOS is doing its thing to initialize the RAM and do some of the basic RAM bring up. And then after that, then it engages the CPU, and then it engages the RAM, and then you actually get the post beep. So it's kind of weird how it works like that. You ran 1.15 CPU VDDQ. See, I heard that the reason why they do that on Intel is because you can damage the Intel CPU if you run too high of the CPU side facing voltage. So I don't know. You heard that 950X has core parking now? That's okay. Core parking is always on every CPU. Like, that's a different topic. But I think what you're talking about is the chipset driver. I did not install the chipset driver, the new one. I have a chipset driver, but it's very, very old. It's literally from 2 years ago or something. So, yeah, no, I'm never going to update the chipset driver. So mine will just behave out of the box. An OCR called V found out that Intel likes high deltas on VDDQ. That is interesting. I may need to look into that, because what I can tell you is I cannot get my 8000 RAM kit to post on my Intel 13900K, but I can get it to post fine on every single Ryzen Zen 4 and Zen 5 CPU that I have, but yet I can't get it to work with the 13900K. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's something to do like what you're saying with the BIOS, the voltages need to be changed. So, but I don't understand why it doesn't work. And the funny thing is that RAM, it's XMP. So it's supposed to be paired up with Intel technically, although obviously it doesn't really matter. But it doesn't have an Expo profile. It has only an XMP profile, and that XMP profile works with every single Ryzen CPU that I have, but it doesn't work with the one Intel CPU that I've been testing it with, which is bizarre. So, I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. Unless I just have a really lousy IMC on that Intel CPU, and yet somehow all the AMD ones are fine. Slightly weak IMC can prefer a high delta. Well, another thing I can tell you guys is my Intel CPU cannot run 128 gigs of RAM above 4800. 4800 is as good as it can get on the Intel platform. With AMD, last year I was pushing 6000 on 192 gigs, but I gave half of that RAM back to another PC. Now I have it again in this PC to test it with the new Zen 5 CPU. So I'm not going to keep the 192 config. I'm going to drop it back to 96 at some point. But I'm trying to test the limits of the 4 sticks of memory on this CPU, and that's where I really feel like these X870 boards, like this Carbon Wi-Fi, for example, could make a pretty significant difference. So I don't know why that's not loading. Anyway, yeah, so that's the Carbon Wi-Fi. My main thing with these motherboards, it's all going to come down to memory. Is the memory performance improved on these motherboards or not? If it's not improved, then for anybody who's on X670 or X670E, this is probably a complete skip. But if they are improved and you're somebody who wants to run a lot of memory, then I feel like and you get USB 4 and all this good stuff, Wi-Fi 7, even though no one really is going to use Wi-Fi 7. I mean, it's good to have, right? So it's an okay upgrade if you're someone who's going to run a lot of memory, assuming the memory performance is improved, like the 4 sticks performance. whatever the default is. VCCSA is like 1.1 to 1.2. I don't really change it that much. Some likes high, like 1.25. 1.25, that sounds dangerous. Well, I guess that's like the upper limit. No, I think mine is like 1.13 or 1.12 or something. I don't remember. I have to look at it. I did try 1.2 and it still didn't work. So at that point I kind of gave up and just gave all that RAM to the Ryzen CPU and just gave Intel like the generic 5600 kit that I have. So anyway, so there's another motherboard that was revealed at Gamescom. So Gigabyte, actually I don't know if it was Gamescom, but Gigabyte has unveiled the high-end X870E AORUS Master with 20 phases. So the Carbon Wi-Fi had 18 phases. The Master has 20 phases, 110 amp, SPS, 256, wait, what? 256 gigabyte? I don't think this is true. I think this is like fake news. 256 gigabyte DDR5 8200. I think what they mean to say is the motherboard supports a maximum of 256 gigabytes and an upper speed of up to 8200. I don't think there is this for real. Like, wait, are they really? I don't believe this. 256 gigs at 8200? No. No. If that's true, if this headline is true, then it actually might be worth upgrading if you're on X670, because that's insane. Like, that much RAM at that kind of speed, this is obviously written incorrectly, but if that's for real, that's crazy. That's crazy. Here I am testing 5200 192 gigs, and this is saying like 256 at like 3 gigahertz faster than what I'm running, or 3,000 mega transfers faster. All right, so this is the best master for AM5 CPUs, up to 256. That's interesting because so far, everything that we've seen from these new motherboards, all of them have listed 192 gigs as the maximum. But now Gigabyte is saying up to 256 gigabytes. All right, the first thing that I'll point out, just looking at this is a standard ATX. So this is the same form factor as the Crosshair Hero, which is different from the previous master, because the X670E is an eATX. It's a wider motherboard. Now they've shrunk it down with this next generation, and I like how they're all copying each other. Look, check this out. MSI copied Gigabyte's PCIe placement down here at the bottom, but Gigabyte copied MSI where they placed the postcode further down, although it's not as far down as MSI, but it's further down than it was. So that is kind of interesting to see. In fact, I think they actually have the product page for this. Hold on, what else do they say here? Oh, here we go. There's this. Yeah, so the product page is up. And they even have the support tab, which means this should be coming out soon. So X870E AORUS Master. So here we go. This is the second of the 4 flagships. Which one am I going to get? I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to make a decision until I see all of them. Until I've seen like ASRock, Taichi, the MSI Ace, and then also verify that they have better memory support, right? Like they'd have to have better memory, particularly 4 DIMM memory support, before I would even consider upgrading. So, because because this is mostly for people who are not on AM5 today. Like if somebody is thinking of upgrading from an old PC, like if someone has a 5-year-old computer or a 7-year-old PC or even maybe a 3-year-old PC, this is going to be a very good upgrade from them. But for someone who's already on AM5, it's hard to justify this sort of side grade sort of thing. So unless, yeah, there's got to be something about it that entices people to upgrade. But anyway, so it's got the whole RGB thing going on. You can see they've moved the postcode down. They have the quick disconnect button, just like the previous one. It looks like there's, what, 4... So it's 4 M.2, just like the Carbon Wi-Fi. They've got one X16 Gen 5. Oh, but this is interesting. This is very interesting. So Gigabyte's doing 2... Wait. One... The second slot is PCI Gen 4 X4. And the third one at the bottom is actually a PCI Gen 3 X4. That is extremely rare to see. A Gen 3 X4 at the very bottom. Not an X2, not an X1, which is becoming more and more useless. Maybe if you're running a sound card, it could be useful. That could be good for a sound card, actually. But yeah, or 10 gigabit LAN. Yeah, but it's got an insane VRM. 8-layer PCB. Low loss PCB, 2x copper PCB. So is this supposed to tell me that, is this trying to say that it's got better memory support because it has all this extra material on the PCB, low loss PCB, 2x copper PCB? Like, what does that actually mean? Like, what is that supposed to indicate? High quality? Is this marketing fluff? Does it actually matter? I mean, the layers matter. But it's not like it's a 12-layer, or it's not like it's like a GPU, which is typically like a 16-layer PCB. But yeah, this is, it's nice. It has the dual 8-pin EPS. It has all the fan stuff at the top. It has a power button. It has, what do we got here? USB 2 down here. USB... They have dual USB 3.2 connectors. One is right-angled, one is not right-angled. 4 SATA, a USB 3.0 right-angled. There's another USB 3.0 at the bottom here. So the audio's in the same spot. They got some fan... That looks like fan headers. Those are some weird right-angled fan headers. And yeah, so it looks decent. It looks decent. I'm surprised that they went from eATX to ATX. I guess they're doing that for case compatibility. You think the old X670E looks better than this? Let's see what they say on here. Thermal. VRM Thermal Armor Advanced 8mm heat pipe. There is like so much put into the VRM cooling and the VRM, which is so overkill. M.2 Thermal Guard XL. Oh, look, they've got what looks like a quick disconnect for the SSD. Everybody's copying each other. They all have the same stuff. It's all toolless now. They're all going with the toolless thing. It's like, do they all, like, are they all in cahoots with each other? They're all, like, sharing their company secrets? Like, hey, here's the button design for the GPU. Here's the toolless design for the SSD. Like, let's just all copy and share each other's homework so all of our products look exactly the same. And it's like even harder for the customer to decide what to choose. They all got quick disconnects now. They all have toolless everything. I like that they have an X4 down at the very bottom, though. I do like that. Okay, here we go. The BIOS flashback button is there. The clear CMOS button is on the back. That was missing from the master on the previous one. It did have a button, but it was like down on the front of the board, like way down here near the front panel connectors. Whereas now it's actually on the back where it should have been from the start. So they went and did that. I guess enough customers complained about that, so they put that there. So then we got what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 USB Type A, and then you got your dual USB 4 because it's mandatory. So you can drive 1, 2, 3 monitors. 3 monitors can run off of the integrated graphics, maybe even more, because technically USB 4 supports DisplayPort Alt Mode, which supports DisplayPort daisy chaining. So technically, you can probably drive a whole lot of monitors off of the integrated graphics. And then, yeah, the new Wi-Fi 7 connector, which is, again, toolless. No annoying, those gold connectors that you have to twist over and over and over again to connect. And then, yeah, a bunch of USB. So, and it's the same as the Carbon. You got your optical, the microphone, 3.5 inch, and the line out 3.5 inch. So that's pretty standard stuff. This new master is going to be really expensive. I don't think it's going to be any more expensive than the previous one. I think this is going to be about $500, if I had to guess. The previous master was $500. But then it got discounted so heavily. In fact, I don't know. I feel like if somebody can find a master, like a X670E master, for under, like, I think I saw the clearance price on Newegg recently was what, like $370 or something. Like, that is a really good deal for an X670E AORUS master. So, I mean, I feel like that's probably the better choice than this, unless the memory is vastly improved. But I expect this motherboard to be around $500. With the 40 gigabit USB-C, could you run PSVR 2 through it without the box? That's a very good question. The answer is maybe. That would be something that I could test. I could actually test that. Because I actually have the PSVR 2 right here. So I was like, yeah, oh, check it out. We got the USB thing right here. So, I have not actually, you know, I could actually test that. That would be very interesting. So I have not tested it with USB 4. But I'll tell you, even if you could, in theory, connect it to the USB 4 and it would work, you would have to use the integrated graphics on the Ryzen CPU to power the VR headset. Because these display alt out are bound to the integrated graphics on the Ryzen. Now, maybe there's a way... So the thing with Windows 11 is with Windows 11, you can actually tell the operating system to use the discrete graphics card for certain software applications. So it is possible to get... Yeah, that would be a very good test. I will actually look into that. I will definitely look into that. Now, obviously, I don't have this motherboard, but I can test it with the Titan Ridge card or the Maple Ridge card or my ASRock motherboard. So I can test it on my X670s and see if that works. You have to have integrated graphics enabled, otherwise it won't work. So that's one thing. For the video out to actually work. Otherwise, you'll just have the USB 4 part of it. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to look into. Okay, I'll definitely look at that. But, yeah, what I can tell you guys is you don't actually need to buy that adapter. You do not need... Okay, if you have a graphics card that has a USB-C on the back, like, for example... the 7900 XTX reference card, or the 7900 XT reference card, or maybe the 6900 XT reference card. Basically, if you have... here, let's go look at this real quick. 7900 XTX from AMD. So if you have this, you don't need to buy the adapter. All you do is plug the VR headset, the PSVR 2 headset, into this graphics card. You literally plug it in right here, And it works. It works. I've already made a, you know why I know this? I already have a video that's going to go live on the channel this Saturday. So this is kind of a spoiler alert, but there's a new video coming out on my channel. It'll debut on Saturday. And it will show you guys that you don't actually need the adapter. You literally don't need the adapter for PSVR 2, provided your graphics card has a USB-C port. So there's only a handful of GPUs that can get away with this. The XTX reference is one of them. So is the XT. So the 7900 XT, this card also has the USB-C. And then the 6900 and the 6950 XT. So this graphics card also has the USB-C connector, so that one would also work. So that is really, really good, man, because I was trying to find one of those adapters, but those adapters are like completely sold out. They literally sold out within the first hour. So, yeah, so not everybody will have the ability to do that. But, man, if you have a USB-C on your GPU, the PSVR 2 is such a good VR headset. Like, it is probably the best VR headset. I think the only other one that I would consider is the Meta Quest 3. But, you know, Meta Quest 3, it's wireless, so there's issues with compression and signal strength, and then obviously the batteries and that kind of thing. So, man, if you want like a tethered VR headset, like wired VR headset, not wireless, this thing is the best one. The price point is decent for a VR headset, and it's an OLED display. This is an OLED display in here. So that alone is like with the what do they call it? The Fresnel, I don't forget what they call it. Anyway, it's good. I've tested it. It works perfectly. It's flawless. So good. But anyway, so where were we? We're talking about the Gigabyte board. Yeah, so I'll look into that. I'll look into the USB 4 to see if that actually works with the integrated graphics. And then if it does, then I'll see if I can have Windows force it to use the discrete graphics card through the motherboard port. Because that would be interesting. Because you know what? If that works, if you can literally plug the PSVR 2 into a USB 4 port that has DisplayPort alt mode, and then have it work with the integrated graphics, you can, assuming you can then tell Windows 11 to utilize the discrete card for Steam VR, for example, because you can do that, then you don't need to have a graphics card that has the USB-C. But you would need to have a motherboard that has USB 4. See? So, and the reason why it has to be USB 4 is because it needs to support something called PCIe tunneling. And you only get PCIe tunneling with USB 4. You cannot get it with USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2, aka 20 gigabit USB. So maybe if the USB-C port has DisplayPort alt mode, because some USB-C ports on some motherboards do actually have DisplayPort alt mode. I know for a fact that the old AORUS Master, I think, had that. We can double check that real quick. I know the Meg Ace, the X670 Meg Ace, does have a USB alt mode port. Let me see. So this is not it. X670E AORUS Master. So we go here. So this is the old one. This is the current generation one. It's an EATX. But if we go down to, let me see. So USB. Yeah, This is annoying. We're going to have to look at the manual. This is super annoying. Just go to the manual. Oh, look. USB-C with 3.2 Gen 2 and DisplayPort 1.4 alt mode. So this one, the old master, might actually be able to support PSVR 2 without a graphics card that has USB-C. Because if you plug it in, the PlayStation VR headset will connect to the integrated graphics. And then if you tell Windows, I want you to use Steam VR with the discrete graphics card, it will actually utilize that through the kind of, think of it like a laptop, guys. Think of it like how a laptop, a gaming laptop has an integrated GPU on the CPU, and then it has a discrete graphics card, and you can tell Windows, run this game with the discrete card, even though the laptop display is physically connected to the integrated graphics. So it's the same kind of thing on desktop if you have a USB-C with DisplayPort alt mode. So I'll test that. Yeah, I'll look into that. I'll test because I'm already on this motherboard. So I just have to plug the PSVR 2 into the port. I don't know. I think I have something plugged into that port right now, so I'll have to like disconnect that. I think the camera or something is plugged in or something like that. But yeah, I'll have to look into that. So that could be a pretty good video if I can show that, because then you don't actually need one of these Radeon reference cards that have the USB-C, because you would just plug it into the motherboard and it would work. I think the requirement will be the USB-C has to support DisplayPort alt mode. If it doesn't have DisplayPort alt mode, it won't work. And if it still doesn't work, then the only other test would be tested on USB 4, because USB 4 features something called PCIe tunneling, which you do not get with standard USB-C ports. So that's kind of the thing there. Yeah, this board looks... Hold on. If we look at this and then we look at this. So this is the old. This is the new. Hold on. Do they have the connectivity page? Why do they do it like that? How come they... Okay. So the old board is an EATX. The new board is an ATX. And let's see. This has... what, 10 USB type A, dual USB 4. The old board had 10 USB A, 2 USB C, but one of them, so the one on the left is a 10 gig USB C with DisplayPort alt mode. So that's the one where potentially you could probably plug the PSVR 2 in there and it might actually work as a VR headset. And then the second one is a 20 gigabit USB-C off the chipset. So what's interesting is the old board supported 3 external displays. 1 DisplayPort, 1 HDMI, and 1 via DisplayPort alt mode off of USB-C. The new board also supports 3 external monitors, 1 HDMI 2.1 and 2 DisplayPort 1.4, both via USB 4. So you're not getting any upgrade in terms of the monitor support. They're both supporting 3. The old one had Wi-Fi 6E. The new one has Wi-Fi 7 with the newer connector. The old one did not have the clear CMOS on the back. It was physically on the front side of the board, so it was more annoying to get to. The new one has the clear CMOS on the back. So they both have what looks like the same audio. And this is a 2.5 gig. This is a 5 gig. Okay, so there is an upgrade on the LAN. Not only is Wi-Fi upgraded to Wi-Fi 7, but now the Ethernet is upgraded to 5 gigabit Ethernet, whereas on the old one, it was 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. So it's doubling the Ethernet speed on the LAN. So that's another thing that's different. So yeah, overall, it does look like it's a decent upgrade when you think about it. You get faster LAN, you get Wi-Fi 7, so that's the latest standard. You get the convenience of the clear CMOS on the back, although one would argue that they should have done that in the first place. And then you're getting USB 4 instead of the USB 10 gig and USB 20 gig. Now you get dual USB 40 gig. So in terms of the bandwidth on the back, the I/O is pretty good on the newer motherboard. So it means you can plug in the PSVR 2 into my... If it's a native USB-C, yes, that is correct. So if you have a reference card, it will work. If you have a card that looks like this, it will work. If you have a card that looks like this, 6900 XT with the USB-C, it will work. It'll work off of that USB-C. I myself have confirmed this, and Rich from Digital Foundry also confirmed that it works. He also got it working, just like me. He was testing with, I think we were both testing with the exact same graphics card. So like we were both testing with this, the 7900 XTX made by AMD Edition. So this one, and it works without the adapter. So you don't need to buy the adapter if you have one of these cards. And that's good because that thing is completely sold out. I was trying to get one on launch day, and Best Buy was sold out everywhere. PlayStation.com is sold out. I think they're all still currently sold out. So I figured, wait a minute, I have a USB-C. Why can't I just plug it in there and see if that works? I plugged it in, and it's like, oh, it actually works. Wow, okay. So I don't need to spend money on the adapter now. Although at some point, I still want to get that adapter because I want to test it with other GPUs. Like, I want to test it with NVIDIA's graphics cards. I want to test it, you know, like, for example, the 4090, the other AMD cards that are not these cards that have USB-C on them. So, like a Nitro Plus, for example. So, yeah. But yeah, that does actually look like it's got some pretty decent upgrades over the previous one. So that means you can plug in the PSVR 2. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we just said that. Okay. Okay. I think that covers this board. You still have the quick disconnect button, just like on the previous one. So that means we're waiting on... We've seen now 2 of the 4. We've seen the Crosshair Hero from Asus, and we have now seen the AORUS Master from Gigabyte. So we're still waiting on the MSI Meg Ace and the ASRock Taichi. And maybe the BioStar, or whatever they call it. Okay, let's talk about GPUs now. Let's shift focus here. Because I think a lot of people that tuned in earlier at the start of the stream were wanting to talk about GPUs. So we can either talk about Intel's Battlemage, or we can talk about AMD's RDNA4, which I need to find the article for that. I thought there was one from like literally yesterday. AMD's mainstream, blah, 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 9,000, okay. Intel ready to... Where's the article on... Was there no article on this? I know Moore's Law is Dead had that whole leak about RDNA4. For some reason, I don't see it on any of these news sites. What is this JDEC? Yeah, I can't find... Can anybody find, like, an article on that subject? Because I can't find one. I can't find an article from literally the last 24 hours. Wow, so no one actually... I guess we'll have to use an older article then? Okay, let's just search RDNA4 again. RDNA4. AMD's next gen. That's 2 months ago? This is the most recent article? From May? Wow, he had like that whole... Do we have to go to his thing? Moore's Law is dead. We just need to get to his slide. Is it this one? Yeah, this one. Alright. Hold on, where... Okay, this one. Okay. Wow, I'm surprised, like, WCCF Tech or none of those websites. Did video card... Hold on. Did video cards have that? How come no one made a news article about that leak? What? It's been like what, almost 24 hours? Anyway, all right, well, we're going to use his page then. Okay. That's weird. Normally, like, stuff like this, you know, WCCF Tech, video cards, they'll all just, like, copy-paste this. They'll screenshot this and they'll just put it on their site and write a paragraph about it and call it the latest news. But anyway, okay, so we'll talk about this and then we'll talk about Intel's CPU or GPU after this. So Navi 48 leak. The rumored performance is around 4080 level raster with a 4070 Ti Super ART. Isn't that what we were kind of predicting it was, like, all year? That sounds pretty much like what we were saying. Well, okay, actually, no. If the raster is as good as a 4080, that means it's actually a little bit better than we originally thought. Because I remember we were all saying that it's the rumors were that the raster would be like a 7900 XT. But if it's gonna be like a 4080, then it's actually better than a 7900 XT, because the XT is it's like right under the 4080 in raster, so that means it's actually better, which basically means, you know what that probably means? It means that they're overclocking it, like they're basically running it at a higher power limit out of the box to get that higher performance, because the earlier rumors were probably from engineering samples that were basically, you know, downclocked more. So yeah. Okay, 64 CU at around 2.9 to 3.2 gigahertz. This is the real world max boost clocks, less than or equal to 95 megabytes of infinity cache. He does say next generation infinity cache, whatever that means. I guess that's the whole RDNA4 thing. 256-bit bus. Okay, 256-bit bus means that this is going to be like a 7800 XT successor, is what this means. So I already can tell just by reading this is from the B team. This is the B team's work. I can tell, because they always build like these more optimized type designs, like the RX 480, the RX 5700 XT. You know, this is basically what they do. They do the one that's like never going to be the fastest, but it's pretty popular and it's pretty good value. So yeah, 16 gigs of VRAM at 20 gigabit per second, GDDR6. I really like the power consumption on this. The power consumption on this is actually pretty good. So it's from 210 to 280 is the power range of operation. That's good, because that means that it's in line with the 7800 XT in terms of power consumption, while offering rasterization like an RTX 4080. So that is actually very nice to see. Increase in RT, okay, monolithic die. Yeah. This is so B team, man. This is totally B team. Monolithic die. That's all you need to know. That screams B team. Added FP8 and Matrix hardware. Arguably proven in the... Okay. October to November, I don't agree with him. I think that's wrong. And we'll talk about why in a second. 500 to $600. And remember, guys, we were saying that it would be like $549. So that's in line with what I was saying earlier this year. My range was a little bit higher than this. Remember what I said? I said $549 to $649. So if it's $499 to $599, that's still within the range, but it's more on the lower side than what I said. Rasterization performance is expected to at least trade blows with 4080. That is actually pretty good, man. Like that basically moves AMD back on target in terms of like RT sort of things. Now the question is this using my first question is this using dedicated hardware for ray tracing? None of this like, oh, the shaders run the thing. No. Is this actual dedicated silicon that is tailor-made for ray tracing? That is like the first question I have for this design. And then Navi 48, because what that means, if this is real hardware ray tracing, like dedicated RT cores for ray tracing, that means AMD literally jumped like 3 generations because they literally had no hardware ray tracing and they literally jumped right past the 20 series, the 30 series, and they caught up to the 40 series is what that means. If this is, in fact, dedicated ray tracing hardware. Rasterization performance is expected to be, okay, ray tracing performance, and some optimized games. There's a suggestion that it could get close to 4080. Navi 48 will have high volume in Q4. AMD, okay, so this, if this launches this year, it will probably be December. It'll probably be December. Because when did AMD launch the 7000, the RDNA4? December. When did AMD launch the 6900 XT? December of 2020. So AMD has now a pattern of launching GPUs at the end of the year, if at all. So this is probably going to be December. The October-November thing, I find that very interesting that he's saying October-November launch time frame, because that's very early. So I don't know. That is very interesting. I don't know how accurate that is. What this probably is, October-November is probably when the channel partners, so think of like Sapphire, XFX, ASUS, Power Color, etc. This is when they will ramp the volume and start shipping the units to the retailers like Newegg, Micro Center, Amazon, Mind Factory, whoever. They start distributing them to the retailers ahead of the launch, so that by the time they get there, then they're ready to launch. So I'm still going to say that I think the true launch for this product, assuming it actually happens this year, is going to be December. I don't think it's going to be October, November. I think it's ramping now. It's going to, like, the dies are now with the AIB partners, and they're putting together their cards that they're going to sell at the end of the year. That's what I think is happening now. And that's going to take place in September and October, and then I think they're going to get them into the channel throughout November, and they're going to launch in December. So that's what I think is going to happen. If these leaks are true, should you just wait for them or get the high end? Okay, this is what I will tell you. I will tell you this because you weren't here at the beginning. Tomorrow, literally tomorrow, AMD is hosting the gaming festival at Gamescom in Germany. We are literally less than 12 hours away from this event. So now that we know that this is actually happening, it just so happens that he leaked this stuff, and oh look, there's an AMD gaming event happening at Gamescom. And what happened 2 years ago at Gamescom? Oh, they announced FSR 3 and the frame gen and the RDNA4, and they showed the XTX, and Scott Herkelman got on stage and was like, check it out, gamers. Check it out, gamers. 7900 XTX made by AMD edition. Like, remember, he did all that. That happened at this show 2 years ago. So if there's going to be a real RDNA4 GPU, it's probably going to get announced tomorrow. So what I will tell you, literally wait for this thing and then the show and then see what they do. So wait. You don't have to wait that much longer. You literally just wait for the show and see what happens. So yeah, they could announce it tomorrow. Will I be live streaming it? What time is this going to take place? This is going to take place very, very early in the morning. So I am normally asleep. I'll think about it. This is extremely early for me. Actually, let me do the time conversion real quick. I'm pretty sure I don't think we're going to be streaming this. We'll probably talk about this in post, like I did with ASUS. Well, let me see. So isn't Germany Central Eastern? Man, that is super early. Wow. That's like less than 8 hours from now. I don't know if we're going to be live streaming that. That's a bit too early, man. We'll probably cover this in a live stream this weekend in post, like after the event. So we'll probably do that. That's super early. Yeah. But this could be the next thing that shows more info on this part. But yeah, that's probably going to be it on that one. Yeah, that's way early. Okay, so it looks pretty good, man. Like this looks, if everything on here is true, this looks good. I mean, it looks believable because I think like I know Met had been trying to track a lot of this down throughout the year, and all the info was so sparse in terms of what was actually out there and what was believable versus what was a complete fake lie. And I think the general trend or the general belief was that it would be somewhere around a 7900 XT to an RTX 4080 in rasterization. It seems like that came true based off of these leaks. And the ray tracing performance, I don't actually know. Did we ever say what the ray tracing was supposed to be like? In his thing here, he says RTX 4070 Ti Super. That's actually pretty good if that's dedicated RT. So, yeah. This could be a pretty good card, man. For anybody who's on like a 2080 or even a 3080, this could be pretty decent because you're dropping power consumption. You're like literally gaining way more VRAM. And your RT performance is also better than 3080 with this. So, that's pretty good. And the raster is like way faster than 3080 if it's like 4080 raster. So 4070 Ti Super is good uplift if that is true. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So is there anything else in this video? Just trying to find out if there's other slides here that he shows besides that one. No, I don't see anything. Oh, what is this? Oh, this was his earlier leaks from February. Hey, Demaster. So X670, X870 use the same chip according to your video. X870 might have better memory compatibility after today's news. That's what the general assumption is at this point. Because like ASUS was touting better memory support because of their patented technology. The MSI guys in their live stream was talking about how they redid the wire traces. They touched on it very, very briefly though. So I assume that it should have better memory compatibility. And then the other thing is too, keep in mind that Gigabyte on theirs, they were, although it was a WCCF Tech article for Gigabyte, this motherboard, they're saying up to 8200 memory support. So I think the general assumption is that it is better because, like, what does this guy say? So the current generation, okay, well, I mean, the current one is saying 8000 as an OC, but again, this one's also an OC. So I don't know. It remains to be seen.
X670, X870 use the same chip according to your video. You think X870 might have better memory compatibility performance after today's news?
So the bottom line is, the assumption is yes, it should, because typically newer motherboards have better designs from an engineering standpoint. But this is an assumption, right? It remains to be seen if that actually is true. So all I'm saying is that when you think about older hardware generations, so think of like Zen 1, like X370, and then the new X470 and the X570. X470 and X570 had way better DDR4 support than X370. X370 could not even try to do 3600 DDR4, as an example. But X470 could sometimes do 3600, and then X570 could definitely do 3600 on Zen 3, for example. So even with 4 sticks of memory. So I think this is going to be kind of like that, where it's like, okay, we have new motherboards, all the learnings from the first generation of DDR5, the motherboard manufacturers went back to the drawing board and they would have designed better trace layouts, or they would have done things differently. Like ASUS was talking a lot about their design. I don't know what these other guys have done. Gigabyte's touting 8200 as their OC target for 2 sticks of RAM. So realistically, when they say that, it means that the upper limit is even higher. Because like if ASUS was saying 8000, people were doing like 8400. And then on the 8700G, on the old motherboards, people were even doing like over 10,000 on an extreme overclock for the DRAM. So it really just kind of depends on a lot of things. But I think we can assume that the memory should be better, but I don't know for a fact that the memory's better, if that makes sense. But in general, it should have better support. You're on B350 and you can do 3600 after all the BIOS updates it had? With 4 sticks of memory? But are you doing 3600 with 4 sticks or 2 sticks? Because the 4 sticks thing is what... Yeah, see, the 4 sticks is... yeah. 4 sticks is the challenge. And that's what I'm wanting to see from these new motherboards. I want to see 4 sticks of DDR5 on these newer motherboards running at like 5600 reliably. Not with someone like me having to do all kinds of BIOS tweaks to get it to work. I just want to be able to plug in the RAM, all 4 sticks, turn it on, set it to like 5600 or maybe even 5400, and it'll work fine. And then if I want to do 6000, I only need to do like very moderate changes to things like VSOC and stuff like that to get it to work, rather than having to go in and do a bunch of trial and error with ProctODT and RZQ values and dividers for impedance and all that kind of stuff that no one really knows about. So yeah, I really don't want to have to keep doing that to get 4 sticks of memory to run at higher speeds. So that is something that I'm really hoping that the newer motherboards improve on compared to the first generation. But yeah, going back to the GPU, I appreciate the comment, by the way, the super chat. Yeah, it sounds like we'll know tomorrow, guys. Like, there's not much more to say on the RDNA4. It either happens tomorrow or it doesn't happen, and then that doesn't mean that these leaks aren't real. It just means that they're not going to get announced. tomorrow. But then we're in the dark again on like when is it going to show up. So anyway, that's RDNA4. So now I guess let's shift focus to Intel. So Intel's ready to take a second crack at the discrete GPU market with the Battlemage Xe2, larger configs, faster memory, bigger caches. So Intel has learned a lot. Oh, have they learned a lot. So Tap, basically, in the Talking Tech series, Tap discussed all the stuff, what to expect. And here is what's interesting. So, in that interview, he said, these GPUs are going to offer up to 50% uplifts in performance and feature loads of architectural changes while utilizing a solid software framework established with Alchemist. So, this is very vague, but like, how do we interpret this quote or what Tap said? Does this mean that the Battlemage GPU is 50% faster than the current Alchemist GPU? Or are they talking about like core for core, it's 50% faster? Which means if they make a much larger GPU, like for example a 384-bit GPU, maybe this thing could be pretty good because the total uplift plus all the core counts could equate to like a 65-75% uplift in performance. Do they mean 50% per XE? So this article doesn't really say too much more. XE core from generation to generation is going to improve primarily on perf per watt and perf per area. And those two characteristics drive both better performance for integrated and for discrete. Okay. Engineers have been very, very busy. Okay, we know, yeah. Okay. So we don't know, actually, how much faster it is. Here is the... Wait, what? Alchemist Plus is an Arrow Lake? That's lame. So they're not getting the latest one? That means Desktop's basically getting the previous generation stuff, man. That's weird. Dual rank versus single rank still a thing? Wow, Demaster with the super chat again. Dual rank versus single rank, is it a thing? Yeah, well, there is a difference. There is a difference. I will tell you that single rank is significantly easier to work with on DDR5.
Is dual rank versus single rank still a thing? Just bought the release today GSkill Royal 6000 CL28 for my 9950X.
Yeah, that'll work. 6000 will work fine. But what I'm saying is, if you're running, say, 64 gigs or 96 gigs, those are dual rank DIMMs, which means that you have... It's kind of like saying you have 2 channels on each stick. If you're familiar with DDR4 single rank and then dual rank, with DDR5, each stick of RAM almost behaves like dual channel DDR4 to a degree. Not exactly, but it is not as bad to run one single stick of DDR5 versus one stick of DDR4, if that makes sense. Meaning, if I run one stick of DDR4, I am not benefiting from dual channel because I'm only using a single channel of RAM. Now, if I have one stick of DDR5, because I forget what the terminology was, but essentially you have almost like a quasi dual channel within the RAM stick itself, irrespective of the motherboard and the memory channels that the motherboard and the CPU support. So if I'm running one stick of DDR5, that is almost like running two sticks of DDR4. So keep that in mind. That means if I'm running dual rank, now it's almost like I'm running 4 sticks, because you have dual rank, but it's almost like you have a 2-channel setup on each stick. So it's almost like a quad channel, but not exactly quad channel. The terminology gets a little bit confusing, but I always like to think 2 sticks of DDR5 is equal to 4 sticks of DDR4. So if I'm running 4 sticks of DDR5, that means I'm running the equivalent of 8 sticks of DDR4. And therein lies the reason why it's so hard to run 4 sticks of DDR5. Because it's like you're literally populating 8 sticks of DDR4 on a DDR4 system. So that's why it's much harder. The dual rank adds a whole nother layer of complexity, because now not only do you have the quasi 2-channel system, almost like a half 2-channel system on each stick, but if you're doing dual rank, now you're literally like multiplying all of that. So it's almost like octa-channel RAM. And that's the reason why running 128 and 192 gigabytes of DDR5 is very, very hard to get to run at high speeds, because we're talking like so many channels, or I guess sub-channels, and then we're talking so many ranks on a, what's considered a 2D PC setup. So that's the reason why it's pretty challenging to run DDR5 when you're doing 4 sticks of RAM. Now, you mentioned single rank versus dual rank. Single rank is much easier to handle because you're only dealing with like the 2 sub-channels per stick. So if you want to run, for example, 64 gigabytes, but it's 4 times 16, that is very doable. You can actually do that on AM5 pretty easily without any trouble. If you're going above 6,000, which most people don't really need to go above 6,000, but if you're going above 6,000, that's where it starts to fall apart in terms of if you're running 4 sticks of memory. It doesn't matter if you're on single rank or dual rank. From my own experience testing all these different setups, it just doesn't really scale beyond 6,000 when you have 4 sticks of memory, regardless if it's single rank or dual rank. Dual rank just makes it harder. So what I would recommend, I would say the optimal setup is 2 sticks of, if you want to go fast, 2 sticks of single rank. If you want capacity, 2 sticks of dual rank. So that means that if you're targeting the maximum amount of memory possible on a single rank setup, that means you're looking at currently 48 gigs of RAM. Because 48 gigs of RAM is 2 times 24, and those 24 gig DIMMs are single rank DIMMs, meaning it is easier for the memory controller to handle 48 gigs versus 64 gigs, because it's single rank versus dual rank. Now, I think eventually, just like with DDR4, the 64 gigs with a 32 gigabyte stick will become a single rank configuration, but that doesn't exist today. But eventually we're going to start seeing single rank 32 gig DIMMs, and that should make 64 gigabytes a lot easier to handle, like tighter timings, like you mentioned CL28 and that sort of thing, in a 64 gigabyte setup. So 2x32 at CL28 6000, you're going to start seeing more of that show up, where it's easier to achieve because it's single rank instead of dual rank. But yeah, I appreciate the super chat on that. Yeah, but there's definitely going to be more memory content on this channel in the coming future pertaining to Zen 5, because that's one of the reasons why I'm focusing so heavily on these new motherboards, because I'm really, really curious to know if these new motherboards offer better DDR5 capability, particularly with 4 sticks and dual rank configurations, because there's been a lot of comments on the videos that I've done for DDR5, and it's always questions about people running 4 stick configurations. Like, they always have 4 stick configurations, even though I think most people, you ask a lot of people out there, they'll tell you don't do 4 sticks, but then everyone's like, their response is, well, why not? 4 sticks looks nicer than 2 sticks. I want to fill all the memory slots up and look at it with all the RGB. So I totally get that, but that's something that I'm hoping these newer motherboards can improve and make that a reality. Otherwise, you can do 4 sticks, it's just you're limited to around, like if you're running single rank, you can easily do 96 gigs single rank, so that's 4 times 24 at 6,000. So just to let you guys know, currently, so if you guys have been watching my content, you guys know I have both the Ryzen 7 9700X and the Ryzen 9 9950X. So we're currently streaming on the 9950X with 192 gigabytes of DDR5 at 5200. I'm going to eventually scale it up to 5600, but we're testing the full stability of 192 at 5200, and so far it's been working for the last several days now without any problem. And you know me, I never turn my computer off. I always put it to sleep and wake it up, so all that stuff is sitting in RAM at low power, and so far there hasn't been a single blue screen or crash. And we tested memtest 86 the first day. We tested memtest 64 like yesterday, I think, and it passed in all cases. So yeah, I think that's safe to say it's stable. And then I also tested Forspoken. But what I can tell you is with the 9700X, so this one I'm running 96 gigabytes, 4 sticks. So that is 4 times 24. And that's currently running at 6,000 Gear 1 at like 1.1 volt. At 1.1 volt. And that's because I'm using the best RAM that I have, which is DDR5 8000 at 1.35 volts. So I have discovered that because that RAM can handle 8000 at 1.35, if I scale it down to 6,000, it can run at 1.1 volt, which is awesome because that means that having all 4 sticks together, they're not going to generate a lot of heat because they're running at such a low voltage. So, and that's been working great for several days now as well. So I'm testing single rank 4 sticks and dual rank 4 sticks currently. And single rank 4 sticks, I'm doing 6,000 and at 96 gigs total, and that's working fine. And then I'm testing 192 gigabytes at 5200, and that also works fine. And that's at like 1.2 or 1.25 volts. So yeah, excellent question, because I get a lot of these sort of questions on my DDR5 videos all the time, and there's just too many comments on the videos for me to go back and like retroactively answer every single person. So it's nice when people ask these questions when I'm live, because then all the viewers get the answer like right there and then. You want 64 per stick? Well, it's going to happen at some point because like Gigabyte's claiming 256 gigs on X870E AORUS Master. So this is what, 64? Yeah, that's a 64 gig DIMM. All 4x64 is 256. So that is going to become a thing. But that would be, I think that's going to be dual rank though. So that's going to be super hard to handle. I don't think this will be that much harder to handle than 192 though. Yeah, but I don't know if Cam 2 is going to come to desktop in the next 2 years. I think if Cam 2 comes to desktop, that's going to be like 2027 or 2020. Like that's going to be 2027 or 2028. I don't see that happening in the next 2 years. So if you're hoping for Cam 2, I think you'll be waiting for a while, especially for desktop. I can see Cam 2 happening in mobile, like in laptops, way before it comes to desktop. Because the thing with desktop, though, is you got to remember, like Cam 2, those modules take up a lot of space. So, and they're trying to fill up all these slots with M.2 and all this connectivity. So if you put a Cam 2 module, how is that going to work if you want to upgrade? Like, you're going to have to buy another Cam 2 module and then sell off the old one? See, I don't know, man. I think Cam 2 is something that we're not going to see for a while. I think that technology has to mature more before it becomes an actual consumer-grade product. Remember, VDD should be equal or higher than VDDQ. Well, you can make it equal. VDDP should be 100 lower than SoC. Yeah, it's always less than SoC. So my SoC right now, actually, it's I'm pretty sure it's 1.1 or 1. It's no more than 1.2. I can tell you that. Yeah, there was an MSI one for AMD that they showed a few weeks ago. But yeah, I don't think it's coming anytime soon, guys. Like, not even for Intel. Like, it's I think what a lot of people don't understand is if you're a motherboard manufacturer, you can't just make a motherboard with Cam 2 and expect everybody to buy it. Like, you have to go through an entire process of feasibility studies and surveying the market and then working with like the actual memory manufacturers, see if they actually see a reason to manufacture that in a large scale. So no, there's just too much stuff. It's not coming at least for the next 2 years. So it's not that I'm thinking that it's bad or anything. I'm just thinking realistically. I'm thinking of it from a product development standpoint. Like, is there enough demand for this? Is it actually significantly better than what we have today in the ability to increase the density and reduce the latency? Like, there's too many things. There's too many approvals and studies and field tests and all kinds of what they got to do with Cam 2 before they can actually say, yes, this is going to come to desktop. I think they're going to do all that work on mobile before they ever consider doing that on desktop. So let's put it this way. If we see Cam 2 come to laptops, then there's a good chance we'll see it on desktop. But if it doesn't come out on laptops anytime soon, we're not going to see it on desktops for a very, very long time. So is it it's not SODIMM though. Is it really in laptops? Name a laptop that has the cam module in it. Because all the laptops that I'm aware of that are new with the DDR5, they're all LP DDR5, which is not cam. That's different. Okay. So we're like way off. Okay, so Intel's GPU. So where do you guys think it's gonna land? Based off of what this said. These GPUs are going to offer a 50% uplift in performance. So what does that mean? Like, how would you guys interpret that? I'm curious to know what the chat thinks about this. Because there's been a lot of enthusiasts that have been wondering, like, what's going on with Battlemage. Is it canceled? Is it going to actually show up as a consumer discrete GPU? Are they going to exit the consumer market and only sell to enterprise? Are they only going to be in data centers and that sort of thing for ML and AI? So what does this mean? 50% uplift. 50% uplift for the core? How would that scale across the entire GPU? Does that mean the overall performance uplift is only 50%? Or does that mean the overall percentage uplift is going to be some larger number that we can't really determine? Who's hyped for this GPU? Is anybody hyped for this thing? Does anybody want to get one of these day one? Anybody? Not you? Stonks is like, eh. Wow, man, what? No enthusiasts are into the Battlemage stuff? Battlemage is literally tailor-made for enthusiasts, though, because enthusiasts are the only ones who would actually consider buying it. That's the thing. Realistically, everybody else, all the normal, like, average gamers, they either don't even know what any of this stuff is, nor do they care to even bother to learn, and they just buy pre-builds. You will save your money and go for an iPhone 16 Pro Max. That is completely different from a discrete GPU, but okay. The RDNA with the new cache will smoke them. I don't think they're supposed to be even competing, man. I think I don't think Battlemage is aiming to go up against RDNA4 like the flagship directly. I don't think that's what we're. Guys, that's not really fair. That's not fair. That's like saying that's like saying who's hyped for a 4070 and then someone's like the XTX will smoke it. It's like, oh yeah, it's pretty obvious. Like that's not what we're talking about though. You're waiting for the 5090? No, not really. Maybe later. Well, RK already missed the boat on the first Intel GPU. So if you're not going to get one at launch, you're probably going to miss your boat. You're going to miss the boat on the second one. If Intel does... See, the thing is, Intel has the limited edition. I'm hoping they do a limited edition for Battlemage. Let's put it this way, guys. Let's put it this way. This is my way of thinking when it comes to this graphics card. For me, if Intel wants to understand me, it's very easy. If Intel makes a limited edition Battlemage, I will buy it day one, guaranteed. Or at least attempt like really hard. I will go try hard mode to buy one on launch day. If they, however, do not make a limited edition, then I won't. I don't care. I don't care. I don't need it. I don't need it. It's one of those things where it's like, if you do a limited edition, it's like the SpongeBob meme. It's like, you know, the whole SpongeBob thing where he's like, I don't need it. I don't need it. I definitely don't need it. And then he goes crazy, he flips out, and he's like, I need it. If they do a limited edition, it's one of those, I want this. I need to have this thing. If they don't do a limited edition Battlemage, and it's like, oh, you want a Sparkle, or you want a ASRock, now they literally lost my attention. And it's like, okay, moving on. Where's RDNA4? That's basically what will happen. So they need to have a limited edition. Otherwise, they completely lost me. You have used their Intel Arc since launch, and their drivers are good now. I'm confident the Arc. You're confident in the Intel Arc drivers? Yeah, I think for regular use case, I've never really had some serious problems with Intel's GPU. The only thing about the reason why I don't use the Intel GPU, this is going to sound like a really weird thing to say. The reason why I don't use the Intel GPU is because they don't actually have virtual super resolution as a feature that you can turn on in Windows to simulate higher resolutions. So what does that mean? That means if I want to benchmark, let's say I don't have a 4K monitor, you know, or okay, let's use a better example. I don't have an 8K monitor. I don't know anybody who has an 8K monitor. But if I am on AMD or NVIDIA, and if I want to experience 8K or simulate 8K for benchmarking purposes, I can use AMD's Virtual Super Resolution, or VSR, to basically make the driver think that the monitor supports 8K. So I can technically set the resolution of my 4K monitor to 8K, and it will do it. Everything will literally be microscopically small at 100% DPI scaling to the point where I can't see it, even though I have 2010 vision. It's like, wow, those desktop icons are so small. Literally, an ant could crawl over the icon and cover it up. So 8K can be simulated on an AMD Radeon via VSR. Likewise, NVIDIA has a feature called Dynamic Super Resolution, or DSR, which is basically the exact same thing. So you can also simulate 8K with an NVIDIA GeForce. Now, Intel does not have this feature at all. So there's no way for me to benchmark Intel's GPU at 8K resolution, or even 5K resolution. And if I was someone who didn't even have a 4K monitor, I couldn't even benchmark 4K if I wanted to on an Intel GPU. So that's the main reason why I don't use Intel GPUs, because they're lacking features that have existed on AMD and NVIDIA for like more than 10 years at this point. I think VSR on AMD came out in like 2012 or something, and NVIDIA had DSR in like 2013. So basically, you know, like NVIDIA and AMD are so far ahead of Intel when it comes to actual functionality. You know, forget about all this ray tracing stuff for a second. I'm just talking about like basic things in the driver tool set. So that's the thing that Intel's lacking from a usability standpoint. Now, is that a very niche use case? Yes, but as somebody who benchmarks things for YouTube content, I kind of would like to hypothetically test 5K or 8K sometimes just to see like what it does, you know, and I can't do that on Intel. Wow, there's like so many chat messages during that entire rant about like why I don't use Intel GPUs. So for me, it's never been, oh, Intel's drivers are trash. I've never actually had too many problems with Intel's drivers. But, you know, I'm the guy who never has problems with AMD drivers or NVIDIA drivers. So, I don't know. I just don't have problems with drivers. Hard to feel FOMO with such an underwhelming product. If the RDNA4 costs 500, what will happen to the used market? It just drives down the value of the used market. You can get 3080 that's way cheaper than the Intel GPU. Which Intel GPU? Oh, well, yeah, I guess. But, I mean, it's used. It has no warranty or anything like that. I don't know what the current resale value of a 3080 is. What is the resale value of the Intel GPU? Very little. Are you sure about that? I don't know, man. The limited edition, give that thing a few years. That thing's going to become a collector's item. Oh, what do we need to do with Tech Power Up? Would it run Wukong though? Not very well. 30% in PUBG. Wait, what? 30% in PUBG. What is 30% PUBG? For what? What are we talking about? Are we talking about Intel's GPU? I'm confused. The NVIDIA even fixes how the low-res video... It fixes the low-res video? I've had thermal engineering, and when I look at the cooling over my 4080, it's like going 10 years back in time. Which GPU are you talking about? The Intel GPU? The Lenovo ThinkPad P1 Gen 7 has 64 gig LP Cam 2 LP DDR5. Okay. So there is a laptop that has it. So they're starting to come out in laptops now. Okay, so that means like 3 years we'll probably see, because not all, you have to remember, not all laptops are doing Cam 2. But it does make sense in mobility. It definitely makes sense in mobile. They're going to have to do a bunch of feasibility studies on what they're going to do with next generation motherboards. For like socket AM6, for example. The mediocre cooler. Wait, the you mean the 3080? What? You mean this? This cooler is actually pretty good. You're talking about this, or you're talking about a Sparkle? Some of those Sparkles are actually really overbuilt triple fan designs. %50 more than ARC means 68%. Wait, is that what we were talking about? Hold on. We can find that out. Okay, this is the A770. 256-bit, and guess what? In that article about Battlemage, what did they say it was? 256-bit. Or no, was that AMD's leak? I think I'm getting them mixed up. Hold on. No, I don't think that's right. Yeah, no, I take that back. They didn't say that. That was the RDNA4 thing. Yeah, no, we don't actually know. Never mind. Okay, so 256-bit is the current one with 16 gigs of VRAM. Here it is. This thing is about the same as a 2070 Super or a GTX 1080 Ti. So for all those people saying that ARC is trash, remember, it is 1% faster than a 1080 Ti. A 1080 Ti. The legendary GPU. The 5800X3D of GPUs. Or I guess maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the 5800X3D is the 1080 Ti of CPUs. Anyway, the point is, the ARC is 1% faster than the mighty 1080 Ti, while also offering more VRAM and being much newer and can do ray tracing, whereas the 1080 Ti literally dies when it tries to do ray tracing. So 1080 Ti, it's great. It had a wonderful life. It had a long lifespan. It lived a full life. But unfortunately, it suffered a heart attack or an aneurysm when it tried to render Alan Wake 2 last year. So it's kind of gone now. That's unfortunate. So RIP 1080 Ti, but it's gone. But just know that ARC A770 is 1% faster than the 1080 Ti. So there we go. It's not that bad. So let's look at what's 50% faster. 50% faster would be around an RX 6800. So Intel is going from a flagship that was equal to a flagship from the launch of Zen 1 to the launch to a upper mid-range card from AMD from the launch of Zen 3. So to put things into perspective, now we get to use Paint. Everybody's favorite. Hold on, why am I not able to... Oh. Where'd Paint go? Oh, there it is. Oh, it's so big because of the... Because I was showing the task manager earlier. That's what happened. I was like, where did it go? It's like so giant. Okay. So, guys, check this out. 2017. The year is 2017. Zen 1 launches. And you know what accompanies Zen 1 on the start of its very long journey? You guessed it, the 1080 Ti. These two are the same age. March 2017. That's how old these are. Then we have the year 2010, 2020. So 2020. You know what launched in 2020? Zen 3. And you know what accompanied that? 3080 and 6800. Or I guess, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it was like, well, let's skip this for a second because we're trying to illustrate something. So then in 2022, A770 launches alongside Zen 4. So Zen 4 launches and A770 launches. So A770 is equal to this. Now we're in 2024. We know what launched in 2024. Zen 5 just launched. And you know what all the rumors are? Oh, look, guys. Battlemage. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen. Check it out. Oh, look. Look at that. I found the pattern. I found the pattern. 50% uplift. 50% uplift. There you go. That would be assuming the same number of XE cores that they're saying per core, which they're going from 32 to 64. Did they say they're going from 32 to 64? Maybe I wasn't paying attention in the article. Did they say that? Oh, yeah, in here. Right here, I mean, there's... Oh, well, we can even listen to him talk. I don't know if we're going to listen to him for the entire video. How long is this video?
Hi, and welcome to Talking Tech. I'm your host, Alejandro Hoyos, and today we have a great show for you guys.
He's the tech evangelist. This guy's the tech evangelist. This guy. He's a tech evangelist. I guess that means that he and I have the exact same job or something. Sometimes I feel like I'm a tech evangelist. This is all evangelism, guys. This is what this guy's all about. Evangelism. Anyway, 2024 might also have RDNA4 and RTX 50. I think we already know it has RTX 50. And we're assuming... okay, HDZ, I don't know if you were here earlier. Tomorrow, there's probably going to be an announcement. Just saying. From AMD. But we already kind of know that 50 series is coming out. Like, that's already understood. The AMD one and the Intel one were the ones that no one really knew about. So, he's preaching the Intel gospel. he's preaching a religion like AMD before. Like AMD. Wait, who's the AMD guy? Who's the AMD evangelist? There is no NVIDIA evangelist. Is there an NVIDIA evangelist? There isn't actually an NVIDIA one. We don't actually. There isn't one. Who from AMD and who from NVIDIA actually goes in the public and talks? Does anybody? I know, like, you know how Gamers Nexus has those two guys. Like, he had those guys from the engineering team from AMD. You know who I'm talking about? Those guys that always show up with the liquid nitrogen. It's like, yeah, that sounds so weird. Hey, you want to come over and do some liquid nitrogen? It sounds so bad. Steve invites the two AMD guys to come over and do some liquid nitrogen with those Zen 5. Are you gonna bring those Zen 5s by with the LN2? Are you gonna bring the LN2? Let's bring the LN2. I mean, those guys are kind of, well, I wouldn't consider those guys the tech evangelist. The NVIDIA, oh yeah, the guy from NVIDIA that worked on the cooler. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. I think I know what video you're talking about. I'm trying to remember who that was though. Was that the same? Was that the other guy from NVIDIA that accompanied the guy who worked on? Because you know how there was the thermal engineer when they did the teardown of the Founders Edition card, and then there was the other guy. Was the other guy the one that did the frame view thing? I forget. Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, but the thing is, there's no like face of NVIDIA, right? Like, see, the thing is, it used to be Tom Peterson. It used to be Tom Peterson. He doesn't work there anymore. He works at Intel. And you know who also, okay, I just realized AMD used to have Robert Halleck, but he doesn't work at AMD anymore. He works at Intel. So it's like Intel basically poached the face of NVIDIA and the face of AMD. And yeah, I don't know. They're about to reduce their workforce by like 5 to 10%. So I don't know if those guys are still gonna be around. I'm pretty sure Tap isn't going anywhere though. He's way too valuable. Tom Peterson is a distinguished. He isn't even a distinguished engineer anymore. You know, like okay, man, I was about to make a biblical reference because we were talking about like tech evangelists just now, but we're gonna skip the biblical thing. What I was gonna say was Tom Peterson at Intel is so high up the food chain that he can basically do no wrong. Like he is no longer a distinguished engineer. He has ascended beyond that title. Like he is beyond distinguished. He is no longer an engineer. When you ascend to the final level, the pinnacle of your career within a large company like Intel, do you know what your job title is? You don't even have a job title anymore. Do you know what you're actually referred to as within the company? Does anybody know what he is? What Tom Peterson is in Intel? Like, what's his actual title? He doesn't have a job role anymore. You know what his title is? He just has a title. He just has a title. Because he has ascended so far beyond. Fellow. He is a fellow. That is the highest level. So for anybody who is unfamiliar with a large company, like a big Fortune 500 company like Intel, if you're a fellow, you are like at minimum, you are equal to an EVP. You are literally like a vice president within the company, but you have no one underneath you. And you have nobody above you. You have no manager, and you have no employees underneath you that you manage. So you're not a middle manager, you're not a director, you're not a vice president, you're obviously not the CEO, but you're not a regular employee anymore. You're just a fellow. You just exist. It's like you're a spirit that has transcended time, and now you just exist to advise the company on what to do because you're so good. You're like God tier level technology and you have so many patents behind your name that there's no way they're going to lay you off. So like Intel's going to cut all these workers from their company. Guess what? Tom Peterson, he doesn't have to worry because he is fellow status. He is not going away. Like if he leaves Intel, that is because he voluntarily decides to do something else, not because Intel lays him off. That's how it works. So, Yeah, that guy is like on a completely different level when it comes to like his role within the company. But yeah, I would say he has kind of become the face of Intel, although I feel like that's only for the GPU. I feel like most people will still look at Pat Gelsinger as the face of Intel. Fellow in university is also like God tier. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same. See, that's the thing. They use that title in both corporate and academia. So it's like, yeah. You basically transcend everyone. There's no one can boss you around, but you also don't have any employees, so you don't actually boss anybody around. You're just kind of there. You know, like you're just there. You just exist. You're a fellow. So it's like, yeah, I'm a fellow. Okay. You know, Tom Peterson's the fellow of Intel. So yeah, to get to that level, you basically have to be an absolute rock star. So the fact that Tom Peterson is a fellow literally indicates to me that this guy is the real deal and he knows exactly what he's talking about when he's interviewed. Herkelman left AMD last year too. Yeah. I don't even know what he does anymore. Like I don't know where he went, but yeah. Gamers Nexus has gone to AMD twice, talking about the CPU and GPU with the engineers. Yeah, I saw those videos. Those are actually pretty interesting videos. Metz says, I don't expect the X3D to be announced this early. Yeah, I don't expect X3D. I would be very surprised if AMD announces like anything with X3D tomorrow. But the thing with Moore's Law is dead. With that leak, there's a high chance that they actually announce RDNA4. But anyway, so we're looking at Intel, right? So if it's 50% at the same CU, like Met was saying that they're doing like double the CU on the Battlemage. So, but that never translates into a 100%. That's never 1-to-1. So if it's 50%, I think it's going to be like one of these. I've been saying that all along. So, yeah, I think Battlemage is going to be like an RTX 4070 up to, well, we'll just include the 3080. So it's like somewhere between this is where I think it will land, the Battlemage. Which means potentially it could get pretty close to a 7800 XT. Which is actually not that bad when you think about it. So, but if it's just the 50% across the board, then it goes back to what I was showing in Paint earlier, where it would basically be this. Which is kind of underwhelming, if that's what it is. So hopefully this is not what it is, but you have to set... the thing with Intel's GPU, you can't set your expectations too high. Otherwise, you're just going to get disappointed if you have unrealistic expectations. I would say expect 50 to 70% uplift, somewhere in that range, across the board on average. Meaning, some games, it'll be 50% faster. Other games, it could be 70% faster, and then everything else is like in between. I think that is a proper expectation to have for Battlemage. I think anything that's above that is wishing for too much. Anything that's below that means that you've actually set your expectations too low, based off of what the articles have been talking about. They have the worst drivers and very little creative architecture. It's smelling meh. If the 7800 XT... if an 7800 XT... It's... Wait, what? If it's an 7800 XT, it's bad because Intel is a high-cost company? Huh? The nodes have gotten much more expensive, so making cheap graphics is a dead end. Yeah, but what will happen though? What will happen though if it's not like? What would happen if it ends up? So what do you guys think is going to happen? Like, okay, let's say worst case scenario, Battlemage equals RX 6800. This is worst case scenario. From my point of view, this is the worst case scenario. Like, okay, well, see, how can I do a poll if I don't even know what the outcome is supposed to be? Like, the question is, what would happen if Battlemage only ends up being equal to a RX 6800, a graphics card from 4 years ago? Because when they made a GPU come out in 2022, it was, well, actually, it was 5 years ago. But that's because 1080 Ti was a legendary GPU. With the exception of Zen 2, it is kind of weird how it tracks like this. It like tracks with CPU, AMD CPU generations. That is kind of odd. But I noticed that. That is really weird. Anyway, you only see people when it's tracking with like an NVIDIA GPU, then it's tracking with an AMD GPU. You only see people with the Intel GPU for the productivity. Wait, people are using Intel GPUs for productivity? Not gaming, even then the NVIDIA is better for the productivity? You think they do 35%, putting it on par with 30? Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, hold on. Wait a minute. What? You think it's going to be 35% only? But how are you determining that when they literally said in the article, they literally said right here, where is it? They literally say here, these GPUs are going to offer up to 50% uplifts in performance and feature loads of architectural changes. So how can it only be as fast as 3070 if it's 50% uplift? Like, I don't understand where that's coming from. If it's only 35%, that'll be a complete fail. I'm serious. Like, if it's only 35%, I don't know. I mean, it's so behind. How can it only be 35% when they're already so behind? You think they're toast? You think Intel's toast? I just imagined like a flamethrower just torching the GPU. Market is saturated and unemployment numbers are getting worse. They need to offer a good deal the next 2 years. Battlemage would be lucky to match a 3090. Wait, what? Where is that coming from? Battlemage would be lucky to match a 3090? That is not what we were talking about. What? Up to. People circle up to 50%. Up to. Wait, so where's this 3090 comparison coming from? People, like, Battlemage would be lucky to match 3090, and then the next comment is literally up to 50%. Where is that coming from? Where's the 3090 thing coming from? Hold on a second. Wait a minute. What? 3090? 3090 is like 100% faster. What? What planet is this? What is this? 201, that's 100%. That's 101% faster. No, this is impossible. This is impossible. You're asking, hold on a second, wait a minute. You're asking Intel, remember, we're talking about Intel's engineers. We're talking about Intel's engineers here. So you're telling me that you expect Intel's engineers to somehow magically, after just 2 years, gain 100% uplift when the fellow himself literally said up to 50%? How do you get 100% from up to 50%? For the same, like, how is that? What? Where's that idea coming from? Intel has said the driver. What? Wait, what's Battlements? Lucky to get 4060, 40 or 7600 area? You need perfect software to use a decent architecture. Intel's guys always say drivers are really hard. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, if they're saying it's hard, how are they going to get 100% uplift if they're saying it's hard? Or maybe internally they're saying it's not hard. It's not hard. Just don't think that it's hard. We got 50%. It's good. We achieved the goal. We're done. Now they're gonna lay us off. You know, like, what's the point, right? Like, how do they feel inside Intel? Like, what's going on? 5% workforce reduction, unless they release some godlike drivers, but I doubt it. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's such a complicated thing. I think, okay. 256-bit Battlemage. I don't see how 256-bit Battlemage can get a 100% uplift. And even then, it's still 1% slower than the 3090. But whatever, it's 1%. So, 256-bit Battlemage. Do you really think a 256-bit Battlemage can get a 100% uplift? Best case scenario 4070, worst case 6700. No, I think no, man, because the worst case, like, this is 20%. So that would be like that wouldn't even be worst case. That would be like it just straight up failed. Like, it, you know, like, what, 20%? After 2 years, 20% on something that was already so far behind? Drivers aren't the problem with Intel GPUs. It's the GPU architecture that is the problem. Yeah, but didn't he say that they fixed all that and it's 50%? He said that in the article. He said, right here, these GPUs are going to offer up to 50% uplifts and feature loads of architectural changes. There you go. Loads of architectural changes. There. %50 per XE core. Yeah, but remember, that doesn't scale linearly when you start multiplying all that stuff together, nor does it scale exponentially. 50% per core at best is going to scale logarithmically. So, and that's why everybody keeps on, like, memeing about this whole up to nonsense. You wonder if it's the literal loads? It's the GPU loads. It features loads of architectural changes, man. Like, it doesn't get any more visceral than that. That's literally right there. It's on the screen. The question is, how does it not 50% overall performance? See, but see, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. So 50% per core. So all I'm saying is, how is someone supposed to interpret this sentence when he says these GPUs are going to offer up to 50% performance uplifts and feature loads of architectural changes? What does that actually mean? Does that mean 30% better? Does that mean 60% better? Does that mean 100% better? And it's somehow all of a sudden a 3090? Like, out of nowhere, it's just like, oh, 3090 now. Okay. Now the front end is the same as NVIDIA's. They're still playing catch up. Hold on. Okay, let's listen to the evangelist.
Talking about Xe2 cores. We're going to be talking about Lunar Lake graphics.
We're just
and
going to
also
have to listen to
a
him.
chat on AI PC.
Hold on, don't put that
amazing
music. You're going to
conversation
get me
with-
demonetized.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Alex, good to see you.
Okay, here we go.
So tell us, so we have this new Xe2 core architecture. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, Xe2 is a huge investment for us here, obviously, right? It's our second
Dude,
generation.
look at the
of Xe.
title. Look at the title. Intel Fellow.
And you can think about it every time we're developing a new graphics core, it's usually evolutionary from where you were. So we've been looking at performance for gaming, performance for AI, media, and display, and we've really invested a lot to make this core our very best ever. So Xe2 is our next generation.
That's great. So what do you look at when you are trying to create something better when it comes to graphics? Do you look at specific workloads? What do you look at?
Yeah, you know, in our first generation, we couldn't run all the workloads that we wanted to because we didn't have hardware. But now that we've got our ARC graphics cards, we can get full performance testing done. And we've looked at hundreds of games, really thousands of games, in lots of different settings, lots of different configurations. And we've uncovered a lot of things that we can improve versus our prior generation. Same with AI. You know, AI has exploded over the last 5 years, and effectively it's a primary workload for graphics on PCs. So the whole AI PC market is new, and our Xe2 graphics core accelerates that dramatically.
This is a sort of, no, not sort of, this is a scalable architecture, right?
It is a scalable architecture.
And one of the things you can actually are going to do with this nice building block
Yes.
is you're going to implement it in something else.
We are. So this Xe2 architecture is obviously the basis of our graphics.
No,
for
they didn't
Lunar
say
Lake, which is
AI.
integrated,
Did they say AI?
But it's also going into our Battlemage next generation discrete graphics. So Battlemage is going to be a larger, bigger configuration with faster memory subsystems and bigger caches and all the rest of it, and maybe even different clocks and different power envelopes.
He's talking about
But
all the things that we're talking
fundamental building block,
about.
That Xe2 core is going to be the same. And this is hugely important because it makes us much more efficient, much more faster time to market, and we can leverage all of our engineering efforts across all of these different market segments.
So one way to look at it is like you have this amazing little piece of Lego block that you're not going to change. Like,
Did you
it's
just
already
say these
amazing,
little
you have
piece of
improved it,
Lego
you perfected
blocks?
it, and now we're just going to build stuff around it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the biggest thing that changes between integrated and discrete is obviously the memory subsystem. So on integrated, you have a shared memory subsystem with the CPU, and it's generally a little bit more constrained by the economics of a PC, using system memory in a shared resource, right? On a discrete graphics card, you have your dedicated memory controller, which is maybe GDDR or who knows what, and it's going to be fast, and it's going to be local, and it's going to be built for you. So the memory subsystem and the sort of like the power budgets are what changed dramatically between integrated and discrete.
Yeah, that makes sense specifically for something like Lunar Lake that, you know, this is for a laptop, so we're thinking about battery life and a bunch of other stuff, but you also want to have that great performance in there.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it's like if you get our Xe core is our building block, and Xe core from generation to generation is going to improve, primarily on perf per watt and perf per area. And those two characteristics drive both our better performance for integrated when you're power constrained and better performance for discrete when you're less power constrained, but more like how big a chip can I build, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes completely sense. All right, so we kind of cover a little bit of how it is a building block.
If
but
they
now
make
let's
a
dive on
large,
if
they make a large die,
What's different?
like way larger than whatever
I
they
would
had
start
on
from,
A770,
our architecture is built around
then
Xe
they
core.
could get
Xe core is
more
our
than
sort of like
50%.
fundamental
But that's because
computational
we're not
block.
comparing
And it's primarily
apples
made
to
up of
apples.
two big things.
If we
One
start
is our
comparing a
vector
larger
unit, and the
Intel
other one is our
GPU
matrix unit. There's some
to
cache
the
in there as well.
A770,
So for the first
that's
time,
like
we're
saying,
taking
oh
our
look,
XMX
they made
instructions and moving them
they
up
made
and
a
down the stack.
3090
So
when
our
the previous
integrated
card was like a
products is well as our
2060.
discrete
You see what I'm
products,
saying?
implement XMX.
Like that's
And
not
XMX
apples to apples
allows us to
comparison,
run
so we can't
vector
use that kind of
arithmetic very
performance
fast. And
uplift
that's all brand
when we
new in
compare
X8
Intel
too.
GPUs.
So matrix
It would have to be
acceleration
comparing
for
a
integrated is
256-bit
all about enabling
with
AI
the
PC.
similar die
So XMS
size
is all
to
matrix-
the
matrix
A770 to
instructions
find
that
out
helps
what
to
the
do
actual
all these
percentage
matrix
uplift
calculations.
is.
Yes.
That is leading to that 2-letter acronym.
AI. AI.
Uh-oh, here we go. He
XMX
starts talking about
is,
AI.
Our architecture that accelerates matrix
Here it comes,
multiplication.
AI. This
and
is
it's
it.
built around a systolic array, which is a fairly complex thing. But think of it as it's a way to cache computations so that you can do these big vector, or sorry, big
Dedicating all
matrix
the resources to
computations
AI.
without writing back to memory a lot. So you can keep all that stuff local as you're iterating across.
See, this
these
is
large
how
matrices.
evangelism works,
And that is
guys.
gonna
This is
dramatically
evangelism taking
accelerate
place
the
here.
performance
But see,
on
the tech
GPUs
evangelist-
for integrated for AI.
He's so
let's talk a
smart,
little
he
bit
called
more
in
about
the
AI. So for
Intel
AI,
fellow to talk.
And let's start from the top.
Okay.
For AI, what has been going on nowadays? What has
This is
been
the
changing? What are
evangelism
big things?
happening.
Because
Oh
that's
my
on
gosh.
everyone's
It-
mind
Oh
right
my
now.
gosh, he
AI
literally said,
is,
"Oh my gosh."
obviously
He said, "Oh my
changing
gosh, it's
every market.
evangelism happening."
And it does seem like it's going to continue to accelerate. And the big thing that's happening right now are these things called large language models.
Oh, here we go.
Everybody's familiar with
LLMs.
ChatGPT or other things like that. And what's really starting to happen is the amount of information that's being trained into these models is allowing AI to start doing higher level reasoning and more
Yeah.
generative AI, where you're
here we
generating
go.
things that normally require
Now we're gonna
people
end
to
up
do
hearing
before.
about AI for
Now
the
you
next
can do
20
it,
minutes.
automatically without a
All right,
lot
we're
of
gonna
human
have to
intervention.
skip through some of this.
That's
No,
all
we
being
don't wanna talk
enabled by
about
a
AI.
fundamental
This is running
change in
complex
architecture of AI called
AI.
transformers. And transformers were invented a while back at
okay,
Google, but now
AI.
they've become much more widely
does the
adopted.
future of
and they're
AI
the
work?
kernel
No,
of
teaching
most of these
AI,
large language models. So
Illusion
transformers
transform
becoming
models,
mainstream.
Optimization,
Large
okay,
language
wait, is he just
models
going to talk about
becoming,
that? Okay,
the
what's
kernel-
new?
When you're starting to dig into the Xe2
Here we go.
architecture, obviously our building block is the render slice, and within the render slice is Xe-core. And Xe-core, as I mentioned, has a vector unit and a matrix unit, and the vector unit has also had a bunch of enhancements for Xe2. You know, that's our fundamental computational block for most graphics. And it's moving to SIMD 16. So SIMD is single instruction, multiple data, and it's the fundamental way that you organize your computational pipeline. And going towards a higher degree of SIMD improves game compatibility. We found that a lot of games have certain SIMD preferences that are hard-coded into the games. So the more similar to that we are fundamentally in the architecture, makes it easier for us to support legacy games. So that's very cool.
SIMD means same
Single instruction, multiple
data. So
Yeah.
you're doing the same thing over and over again,
Yeah.
but with like if you're-
Wider data. So think of it as when you're doing graphics, you're generally running the same operation across multiple pixels. So the way to do that is generally each lane represents effectively one pixel. And you're doing lots of similar computations using different data to get different colors for pixels. That's grossly oversimplified, but that's the idea. And that same idea applies for geometry, where you're kind of running multiple vertices all at the same time, doing the same mathematics to do sort of translation in world space or in screen space. You're doing basically these large matrix multiplications all at the same time on different data. And so that's why our pipeline is organized like that, with multiple threads and multiple data for single instructions.
Okay, so that makes sense. And what about the extensions, the XMA extensions we were talking about earlier?
Oh, so XMX is this whole matrix thing. And on graphics, you know, the matrix extensions are harder to make use of. They're mostly about accelerating AI-style processing.
Oh my,
So
no,
XMX
no.
on graphics would typically be doing a post-process like XeSS. XeSS is obviously enhanced for Xe2.
Okay.
And
You're about to
it
start
uses
talking about
our
AI again.
XMX
We're about to have to skip
instructions
ahead.
get great quality super sampling. And that now applies to our integrated products as well.
No, that's great. There's another thing that also has been brought here. Can't remember if it's new or not, but you have the ray tracing, and also it's been improved.
Yep, we've improved our ray tracing performance. We've upped the triangle intersections, so you can, you know, if you back up and say, what is ray tracing? It's an engine that allows you to, in sort of three-dimensional space, you can cast a ray out into the world and ask the engine, what triangle did I hit? And if you
Yeah.
think about that fundamental operation, it's kind of like, well, is that good for something? And you use that fundamental operation to do lots of different effects. Like you might calculate a shadow using that engine, or you might calculate global illumination, or you could calculate reflections. So using this simple operation, which is cast a ray into this space and find that triangle, that is very useful to do many, many different effects. So that whole engine is a significant advancement, and it's getting better for Xe2.
So let's talk a little bit about the render slice and kind of that what does that mean when it comes to kind of performance?
Sure. Well, I mentioned the render slice is sort of our fundamental building block that we can scale up. And it's important that that thing gives you great performance, but not just performance, but it's got to be efficient. So most of the work we've done for Xe2 is present in the render slice, and it's improving performance dramatically. We're going to see Lunar Lake performance I think we're all going to be very happy with, and this is also going to translate dramatically into Battlemage performance. So our engineers have been very, very busy improving over our ARC GPU to where we are now ready to take our second crack with Battlemage.
No, that's great, and there's a lot of people looking forward to.
Yeah.
I mean, to both of them, Lunar Lake and Battlemage.
Yeah, I think I shared a few micro benchmarks in the presentation. Maybe you can flash them up, but you'll see performance improvements. And these are just micro benchmarks. They're sort of this engineering-oriented thing. We're not giving out real game data right now, but you can see the variation is somewhere between a huge amount, and that's when we're doing execute indirect. I didn't mention execute indirect yet, but that's one of those instruction types that turns out is very important for next-generation game engines, and it's a different way of processing data in graphics pipeline. We didn't support it natively in ARC GPUs and Xe. Now we do on Xe2. So you can see our benchmarks that are focused on execute indirect are 12x and 7x. That's because we're moving from more of an emulated style to a directly implemented style.
Okay.
But all across the boards, whether it's bandwidth or it's computation, you're going to see much more close to peak performance.
It's very exciting, and like it's funny.
New video
it is
from
off the chart
what?
that we actually had to shrink the
Yeah,
chart in there to see
for
it.
sure. And this is again, your mileage will vary. This is not clock related. This is not power related.
Right.
This is just talking about Xe2 and the fundamental architecture that's going to be driving both Lunar Lake and Battlemage.
Right, because your mileage might vary depending on the design of the platform,
Yes.
power,
Absolutely.
thermals, and everything else.
Okay, well that's good.
Right, now that
So
we're in the side of the platform, let's talk a little bit more. I mean, I love Xe2. It's very looking forward to this amazing core, but Xe2 is the core for the graphics on Lunar Lake.
Yeah, it is.
So let's talk a little bit quickly about
About how Xe2 impacts Lunar Lake, right?
Yeah.
So I think I have a curve in there you can pull up, which is showing effectively a frequency diagram, right? This picture here, the Xe2 GPU performance picture you're looking at says that we are 1.5x versus prior generation. And the way to think about that curve on the top is Xe2's GPU performance. And you can see compared to Meteor Lake H and Meteor Lake U, we're always above the line, which means that at any power, we're going to deliver higher performance.
Yeah.
And it also is one line versus two lines. So for Meteor Lake, we used to have two different variations. We had a Meteor Lake H SKU and a Meteor Lake U SKU. Lunar Lake, there's just one implementation.
Yeah,
and
that's
that spans
the
the
low
entire
power and the high
range,
power.
all the way from that high mobile part
What
up
do
to
we
higher
got here?
performance
Let's see,
discrete
display
parts.
engine.
the display.
Well, a new display engine for Lunar Lake as well. One thing that's going to be different this time is we're not connecting the display engine to Xe2. So the display engine is going to be moving forward on its own cadence, just like the media block is going to be moving forward on its own cadence. But the display engine for Lunar Lake does add EDP 1.5 for the first time.
Oh,
which is going to bring a bunch of new features
what?
for how panels can
EDP
interface directly to Lunar Lake.
1.5?
And it does things like brings much better support for
I didn't
variable
even.
rate
That's the
panels
first I've ever
directly
heard
to
of that.
Lunar
I
Lake.
didn't even
So
know
it's
there was
gonna
such
be
a
very, very
thing.
cool. And on the media
Embedded
side, we're
display
supporting
port
VDC, which is a brand new
1.5
media codec.
for laptop
It allows us
screens.
to do basically higher quality images at lower bit
But
rates,
we don't
which is,
talk
a
about
very good
gaming
thing.
laptops on this channel.
And it also allows us to do dynamic compensation for streaming congestion. So there's some new techniques inside of VBC that will automatically adjust the transmission without sort of tearing down and resetting your media stream. So it's going to make things like Netflix.
They show
once,
F1 running
everything's deployed,
60
look better.
FPS.
No, that's great. Actually, I had a question for you.
This is for integrated
with respect to
graphics.
this, out of curiosity, when you
With a
are
50%.
implementing
Wait,
a new
what?
product, it doesn't have to
The
be
integrated
VCA,
graphics have a 50%
What do you have to
uplift?
take a look at from an architecture perspective? Like, what do you have to?
Wow. Well, the first thing to start with is
Wouldn't
all
that
these
mean that the
codecs
discrete is
are
also 50%
collaborations.
though?
So there's large standard bodies that are developing these together, and everybody's bringing their best ideas. But there's a couple techniques that have emerged in codecs. I actually did a video, maybe you can link it, about how do we do media codecs, and it's super complex and it's super cool. But there's a basic technique, which is there's a frequency compression that happens. So you're going to take your image and you're basically going to do some math to convert it to a frequency representation.
Wait,
And then
what?
there's
Hold on a
actually
second.
some
Whoa,
interesting
hold on, whoa,
algorithms
whoa,
for
whoa.
how to prune data.
Whoa,
in
hold on, wait,
frequency
he's going too
space.
fast.
The other thing you're doing is temporal compression. So you're looking at frame to frame.
He's too high.
much of
It's
that
too
data
much.
is the
It's
same.
like he's too.
So the algorithms typically focus
Fourier
on those
transform,
two
what's he
spaces.
doing?
One is how
Fourier
can
transform?
I detect more reuse of pixels from
Frequency
prior
domain,
frames?
what?
And maybe instead of looking at one frame in the past, I'll look at two, or maybe instead of looking
What about my
across
time
a
domain?
smaller region, I'll look across a bigger region.
Is he
So
doing
these
convolution?
techniques are always kind of looking for things that are high ROI, big bang for the buck, because these codecs tend to get more complex, and that means it's harder
Yeah.
to compress things. It takes more energy to convert the original raw bit stream to this compressed thing, and it generally would take more energy to decompress it. So there's a trade-off between sort of compression quality and energy required to decompress. That's why we generally put all this stuff in hardware. So when you look at our compression and our actually right now it's just decompression for VVC, but that is all in hardware now.
Wow, that's impressive, and it's a lot of things, and a lot of things in Lunar Lake, and I mean from XMX to the compression to all the new codecs to EDP 1.5.
And AI, a new NPU. We got a new XE core with faster XMX. So I would say that Lunar Lake is shaping up to be quite a part.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I can't wait to play with it. And Tap, thank you so much for spending so much time with us.
Hey,
This was
happy
a
to
great
do it.
conversation.
Yeah,
I
Alex,
appreciate
happy to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. Okay, so that means, though, going back with what they said here, they're taking this statement with respect to the mobile graphics. But at the end of the day, like if it's a 50% uplift per core, then to derive the discrete GPU uplift, we would have to assume the same 256-bit configuration with similar core count to kind of get what the overall uplift would be. So, yeah, we don't really know at this point, but I don't know. I still feel like this thing is going to be around an RTX. Even after listening to that, I still feel like it's going to be like an RTX 4070. Like, the 256-bit part is probably going to be like an RTX 4070. If they make a much larger die, though, like if they make a much larger chip, then they could actually come out with something really interesting. Like maybe the 6900 XT, possibly, because that would be like 80%. If we compare let's just use the 3060. Well, what was the 3060? Where is the 3060? Where is it? It's like way down here. 3060. Why are there two? What's going on here? Oh, the stupid 12 gig. What was the other one? Where's the regular one? Anyway, so the point is, if we go to a larger die, like now we want to look at the 4070. Yeah, 83%. Okay. So the larger die, if they make a big die for the big Battlemage, the big Battlemage would be like 80 to 90% uplift over this. So now I want to look at the 80%. And like I just said, 6900 XT is 83%. Because if we look at like what did I just show you? 3060 to 4070 is an 83% uplift. So yeah, so the big Battlemage could be like a 6900 XT, and the regular one, the direct upgrade from the A770 would be like an RTX 4070. So they could have 6900 XT performance on their flagship GPU then. That would be interesting. How much are the cards projected to sell for? So the big one is probably going to be like $500. $500 for the big one. Like $499. I guess the A770 or the B770 would be like 400, somewhere around there. So, yeah, that's kind of what I think is going to happen. They could have something pretty competitive though at that. So, see, the thing is, like this at this performance, it would be around $500 today. So that's where I think it would land for the big one. The medium one, like the mid-range, upper mid-range one, would be like $400, like RTX 4070. $500 for 6900 XT performance in this year would not be good. 7800 XT is dropping below. Yeah, well, see, the thing is, tomorrow, like, AMD might announce that RDNA4 thing. So the RDNA4 one could end up being, you know, if that thing has rasterization as the 4080, which is like 162% faster than the Intel A770. So, like, let's do this. Here, just click on this. So if this is the big Intel Battlemage, hypothetically, AMD's card, if the rumors are true, is like 40% faster. That means like RDNA 4 would still be 40% faster than the big Battlemage. So, and what were the rumors on the Moore's Law's dead video was, what was the leak price? He said something like, where is that thing? $500 to $600. So I originally myself thought it would be like $549 to $649. But, you know, like somewhere around there. Somewhere around like $550 is what I was thinking for that card. But that would still end up being like 40% faster than Intel's card. So, yeah, I don't know. Intel's going to be stuck for a while in terms of being able to price their card if they want to get more margin on the part. Although, who knows what the die size will be. We don't actually know the die size of this thing. So, yeah, I don't know. Things are going to get really interesting. We'll find out what happens tomorrow at that AMD event. If they announce RDNA 4 or something. Intel is doomed if they sell it at $500. Why are they doomed if they sell it at $500? Oh, because the AMD card is 40% faster, potentially. Remember, all this stuff is hypothetical, but it is all educated guesses. Like, this is not like, you know, if you're not following the logic, then people weren't paying attention, but I think this is doable. I think it's doable. I think Intel can do a 6900 XT level Battlemage card based off of everything that I've just listened to from that tech evangelist and that Intel fellow. Me too, that card will be more expensive in practice. AMD will not sell cards directly anymore. Do we know that for a fact, though? If Intel sells at 500, then at that point, the 7800 XT would be selling for less and same performance at the same time. Yeah. I think they could. Of course, I think they wait, but those two always overpromise. Would you still get the card if it turned out to be weaker than previous gen? How would it be weaker? Wait, what? Would you still get the card if it turned out to be weaker than The card can't be weaker than previous gen based off of everything that we've just listened to. But it had 64. I don't understand. That question doesn't make any sense. First of all, it can't be weaker because TAP said so. And it's not going to have 64 gigs of VRAM. That wouldn't fit, first of all. Like, or even 128 wouldn't fit either. I'm confused by that question. That's a weird question. Are we talking about the Intel card or are we talking about the AMD card? AMD NV gens, maybe? Wait, what? He is talking about RDNA4 being weaker than 7900 XTX. Oh. Is that what you're talking about? Oh, you're talking about this card. Wait. How would this card have 128 gigs of VRAM, though? I'm confused. Like, I'm confused how this card would have that much VRAM. It can't have that much VRAM. I feel like this card and Intel's card are more interesting than Nvidia's cards, though. Like, Nvidia's cards are very predictable. AMD and Intel are more, like, variable and more unpredictable in what they can actually do. So, yeah. I'm surprised there was, like, no announcement of for like Nvidia. Like, there was nothing Nvidia at Gamescom. Did you guys notice that? Did anybody notice how Nvidia was completely missing in action at Gamescom? Is it just me? Like, where was Nvidia the whole time? Like, what happened? Ghost of Christmas Present? Where did it go? It, like, snuck off? While we were all watching the ASUS show? Is the Grim Reaper gonna come in? Like, what's going on here? Anyway. How much VRAM is on AMD's 32 gigabytes? On the W7800, it's 32 gigabytes. Do you think Nvidia is still releasing this year? Yes, I do. I don't know what they're releasing, though. I think they're going to release the 5080 first. You were told from Northwest Repair directly that it costs him $10 for 24 gigabytes of GDDR6X. You do realize he's buying in very, very bulk volume, though, right? Repair shops are buying in volume. They're buying bulk. Didn't Nvidia say they were aiming for a release every year? What? When did Nvidia say that? No, Nvidia never said that. Nvidia has always, guys, Nvidia is very predictable. Like, it's all pattern recognition. Listen, you don't have to watch any leaked videos. When it comes to Nvidia, you don't have to watch Moore's Law's Dead's videos. You don't have to research leaks or anything like that. I've done this discussion on Nvidia launches like so many times now. All you gotta do is remember every 2 years. Every 2 years. Every even numbered year, they introduce the new flagship, and then in the odd numbered year, they refresh the entire stack. Does that make sense? Meaning, guess what? It's an even numbered year. It's 2024. You know what that means? New flagships this year. And you know what's coming next year? The rest of them. The 70, the 60, the 70 Ti, the 60 Ti. All those cards are next year. None of those cards coming out this year. But what is coming this year would be the 5080 and the 5090. Q4. Q4. You don't need to be an expert in this stuff. All you gotta do, ask yourself, are we living in an even numbered year? If so, there's gonna be a new flagship this year. They just put up a few videos of upcoming RTX. Like Black State? Black what? On their YouTube channel. Historical uplifts will not translate to performance uplifts anymore. And that include... What are we talking about? Where is that coming from? No one was talking about uplifts. People were talking about like when to know when the NVIDIA GPUs are coming out. Moore's Law's dead said it, and it makes sense. They can outpace AMD and Intel since they are flush with cash and can outpace the competition. I'm thinking NVIDIA wants to mix it up to shake off the competition. Okay. Yeah, that... They barely look at AMD and Intel when it comes to GPUs. And NVIDIA has a whole different set of concerns right now. Yeah, NVIDIA is not concerned. Okay, they're like, to an extent, they're paying attention to what the other two are doing, but they really don't care. Like, you guys don't understand. Like, it's not, when people say things like that, it tells you that they don't actually know the bigger picture. You're not aware of like what the actual threat to NVIDIA is. It's not AMD, I can tell you that, and it's not Intel. It's like, it's neither one of them. They have a different set of people that they're concerned with, and it's not AMD and Intel. But I don't think we're going to talk about that. That's going to be another 40-minute discussion, and we don't have time for that right now. That'll probably be like another video, another live stream. As we get closer to 50 series, we'll start talking about NVIDIA. Jensen said he has nightmares about being out-competed. That's his mindset in that scenario, such a change. Yeah, but you don't understand. Like, are you aware of what NVIDIA's biggest fear is right now? Is everybody here aware of actually like the real threat to NVIDIA? I don't think people know what the actual... Okay, it has to do with AI, but it's not actually AI. Who are the companies? It's companies. I'll give you that hint. Who are the companies that have the level of scale in terms of monetary span that they could directly compete with NVIDIA? Qualcomm, that's an interesting attempt. I wouldn't say... Qualcomm maybe, but not directly. Not in like the 3 to 5 year roadmap, no. Qualcomm sort of. I'll say sort of. Definitely Qualcomm is more of a threat to NVIDIA than AMD and Intel. But I don't think it's Qualcomm. No. Max got it. ARM. It's not specifically ARM, because ARM is basically an architecture governing body. It's really the companies that are looking to create their own GPU solutions from the ground up, dedicated for AI and enterprise and that sort of thing. So think of it like Chinese startups, like More Threads, for example. And Amazon is a bigger threat to NVIDIA than AMD and Intel combined. And then at one point I thought maybe Apple, but not really. I feel like Apple's not targeting that kind of market, but I wouldn't be surprised if Apple has an engineering team that is secretly toying with different sort of GPU architectures, at least simulating different architectures, trying to come up with one for AI workloads. So a lot of it is actually, so NVIDIA's biggest threat is companies that are currently buying NVIDIA graphics for all this LLM stuff, all this AI stuff. They're afraid that those companies will go off and develop their own silicon and then fabricate their own silicon and start doing that. And then just basically what they're afraid of is companies doing the Apple thing. What do I mean by that? The way Apple abandoned Intel and developed their own M-type chip, which is an ARM-based chip. So there's nothing stopping the hyperscalers from developing their own silicon and like abandoning NVIDIA because the pricing is just too stupidly high and they're kind of sick and tired of it. So at the very least, they're looking at other vendors like AMD with that MI300X or whatever, and then Intel's Gaudi too. But that doesn't solve the problem. Like they're still stuck depending on another company to provide this solution. It's like, why do I need to do that if I can invest in the CapEx, OpEx? Well, okay, if I can invest in like OpEx development efforts and kind of write it off as pseudo CapEx versus like just CapEx every year to NVIDIA, you know, for a bunch of overpriced GPUs, which are basically, they're calling them AI accelerators. Like, why don't we do this in-house? You know, those are the sort of discussions that are happening in a lot of these different organizations globally. And that's their biggest fear because that's their biggest revenue stream now. So if that just vanishes, like, you know, can NVIDIA scale back down to the way they were before the AI bubble? I don't know. See, that's the thing. The thing is, there's like NVIDIA is so over leveraged right now that there are potential pitfalls that they could easily fall into if they're not careful in navigating this whole AI bubble. So that's why they're trying to out-innovate everybody in AI, because as long as NVIDIA can stay at the forefront and appear as the industry leader in AI, people will keep going to them for the solution. And it's like, as soon as these large companies start, oh, we don't need these guys, we can just make it ourselves, you know, like it's not that hard. And they have their own programmers on staff, which will develop their own code that's meant to go work with this one architecture that they're making, just like Apple. You know, like, why do we need to waste money on NVIDIA stuff anymore? You know what I'm saying? So now it gets into the whole thing about like CUDA and the dependency on CUDA. Well, that's why things like ROCm and just kind of opening up the standards is a huge threat to NVIDIA, way more than just AMD trying to sell Radeon GPUs to gamers, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean that's the real enemy that NVIDIA is doing battle with right now. It's not AMD. It's definitely not Intel. I can tell you that. But it's hyperscalers and all this other stuff that the gamers don't actually pay attention to and know anything about. So, yeah, but NVIDIA can lower. No, but do you understand NVIDIA can't? Do you understand that they can't? And do you know why they can't? Do you know why they can't lower their prices? This is the problem. You see, again, there's a lack of understanding in how business works. I've noticed a lot of my viewers understand the technology really well, but what you guys don't understand is the business case. It's the business side of things. There's clearly a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding of the business. NVIDIA cannot lower their prices. They can lower their prices to a degree, but they can only lower it to a certain amount. They don't have as much wiggle room as someone like AMD does. And you know why that is? You want to take a guess at why they can't lower Why is it that NVIDIA cannot be as flexible in their pricing compared to AMD when it comes to selling these AI chips? I mean, it's not like AMD's chips are significantly cheaper to manufacture. They're both very, very big dies from TSMC. But why does AMD have the ability to go down on margin more than NVIDIA does? See, to really understand this industry, you have to have a very strong understanding of the economics and the business and how these businesses operate, because it's very, very different. It's not about the gaming. It's not about the gamers and the GPUs. 4090 is a joke in the grand scheme of things compared to what they're actually doing battle with. Market share? No, not necessarily. No, not really market share. I mean, market share has an influence on the effect, but that's not really what it is. No, it's not market share. All right, well, we don't have much time, so I'm going to give you guys the answer. It's the stock price. It's the stock price of NVIDIA. The market capitalization has grown so big. Basically, NVIDIA is becoming overweight. To put it lightly, NVIDIA is becoming an overweight company. Their stock price has ballooned. They've had multiple splits to try to stem that growth, because they're trying to not stop the growth. They're trying to attract more investors, is what they're doing. By splitting the stock, like they recently did a few months ago, they're trying to get more buy-in. They're trying to drive more investment into their company from the outside. And that creates a positive feedback loop where it just exacerbates the problem. It makes it larger. It makes them more like bloated in terms of the amount of capitalization that they're carrying on the market. So it basically makes them heavier and heavier and heavier. Like they're growing like this giant tumor in the stock market next to all their neighbors, and everyone's just kind of like expecting it to just somehow self-sustain itself. And yeah, that's actually the real reason why they don't have the ability to come down in price too much, because if they were to do that, that's going to drive down their profitability. That's going to drive down their revenue, for one thing. You know, that isn't even profit, but they're driving down revenue. It just has a huge negative. It has a snowball effect that can be very, very bad. And it's, yeah, I don't know. It's that's the problem, guys. Like, NVIDIA's problems are all problems of their own self-making. But it's just not as visible to consumers, because consumers will only hear, oh, 14900K is killing itself due to too much voltage. Shame on you, Intel. You're a bad company. That's bad. Like, that's what consumers will see, and they'll harp on something dumb like that in the grand scheme of things. Or, oh, AMD told reviewers to install chipset drivers which don't actually need to be installed, and they don't actually give the right performance uplift. So it's actually better to run them without the chipset driver that AMD said that they had to install. Shame on you, AMD. Like, that's the sort of stuff that consumers will see. And they're like, oh, those companies screwed up, you know, like, oh, okay. But those are sort of like really small, minor things in the grand scheme of things compared to the problems that NVIDIA could potentially run into monetarily. So, yeah, those are the problems that NVIDIA faces. They're facing a different kind of battle. They're fighting a different kind of battle. They're essentially fighting a war with themselves. Well, not hypothetically, like metaphorically, they're fighting a war with themselves, because they are kind of a victim of their own success. And they're like, Jensen's biggest fear is that there's going to be all these startups, like particularly from China, because we all know that the Chinese government has made significant investments in startup companies to try to home grow their own silicon designs. They basically want to create their own companies that are chip designers like AMD and NVIDIA that do not have fabs like TSMC and Intel, but they can make these designs that can become competitive with NVIDIA over the next several years. So that is actually what NVIDIA is afraid of. And on top of that, the stuff that I just mentioned, hyperscalers trying to do their own designs in-house and move away from NVIDIA, just like how Apple moved away from Intel. Like, there's nothing stopping those hyperscalers from doing that. They have enough engineering resources, they have enough budget. If they need to poach somebody from another company, like they can offer an NVIDIA engineer, like a huge salary increase, or give them an automatic promotion to director level, or whatever it is. Just basically start pulling people from NVIDIA or pulling people from AMD or somewhere, and that's just how it is. So that is the stuff that NVIDIA deals with. Like, it's at that level. It's not AMD, it's not Intel, it's actually like higher level problems, like problems that the public doesn't actually see on it. Like, gamers are completely oblivious to this. So, but that's actually what it is. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this stream. So next Thursday, I'm actually going to move the stream to Friday, and we're going to try doing this Tech Thursday on Friday next week. It'll be the same time, but it'll be, well, yeah, the plan is to have it next Friday, not next Thursday. So we're going to see how that works. But anyway, I think it was a great episode overall. I think what we'll be talking about next week is probably going to be more GPU discussions. Maybe some new motherboards will get shown off. We still haven't seen the MSI flagship or the ASRock flagship. So that's going to be it for this week. And we're going to be back next week with more GPU and I guess CPU stuff. I have been benchmarking the 9950X. I do need to get the review put together for that CPU. So that should be live on the channel sometime next week. Just to give you guys a heads up on that. And then we're going to start focusing on DDR5 overclocking. And we're also going to look at CPU overclocking on Zen 5, particularly Curve Shaper, because there's not a lot of content on Curve Shaper. So we are going to do some videos on Curve Shaper. We're going to look at single CCD and dual CCD in separate videos. So stay tuned for that, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.